And at one of the
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order for special meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission, Tuesday, March 25th, 2014. Before we start, we have a couple of notes. We did have a sign-in sheet this evening. If anyone would like to speak either in favor of the proposal or in opposition, we do ask that you take a moment, if you haven't already, and put your name on that. So we've got several people that may want to speak this evening. We want to give everyone the opportunity to talk. To give a quick rundown of kind of how the proceedings will work this evening, first, city staff will come up and give a report and their findings on the application. We'll go through that. At that time, if any of the commissioners have questions, they can direct those to the city staff and get those answered. After that, we will open up the public hearing portion. Those that would like to, the applicant and those that would like to speak in favor of the proposal will have an opportunity to get up and speak. We ask each person that comes to the mic to state their name and address for the record. After that portion, the commissioners have opportunity to ask any questions to the applicant or those in favor at that time. Once we close that portion of the public hearing, we open up the opposition side. Anyone that would like to speak in opposition, if you've got your name on the sign-in sheet for both sides, we'll go ahead and open that up. You can state your case, and then if anyone, commissioners again, have a request on that. After that portion closes, the applicant has the opportunity to come up and restate if they choose, an opportunity just to clarify any comments or anything like that. We ask that if they do choose to come up after that, that's new information, that they just don't reiterate their same side. So if all of our comments, if we ask all the comments to be original comments, someone's already stated your fact or stated that, please do not just reiterate that over and over and over again. We ask that for a time constraint, so everyone will have the opportunity to speak. So please do not just say the same thing over and over. At this time, we have one item on the agenda this evening, Park 7 Group Preliminary Plan Unit Development, PZ.14.1814, requesting review and approval of a preliminary PUD to rezone property addressed as 799 East Mercury Avenue from IG Industrial General to RTM Residential 2-Family and Multifamily District to allow for construction of residential structures. Ms. Dennison?
Good evening. Paula Dennison, Development Services. What we have before you this evening and in your Planning Commission packets is a request for a preliminary PUD with an underlying map amendment from IG to RTM PUD. A couple of housekeeping things that I want to make everyone aware of. We received revised lines of sight yesterday, Monday, the 24th. Those will be the ones that will pop up in my presentation, but the planning commissioners, y'all have those laid out before you this evening. Also, there is one error in the report, and I'll bring that to your attention. On the first page, under Project Site Design Data and Details, the parking, the required parking spaces of 682 is correct. The proposed spaces is incorrect. It's not 953. It's 1,025. On the second page, in the parking summary table, the same thing. The 953 with 38 handicap is incorrect. It is 1,025 spaces, and 29 of those are handicap spaces. So those are the corrections. You will see the corrected numbers in the presentation from staff this evening. And also, as all of you got the email from me.
What was it? I missed your second question.
On page 2, the parking summary table, the proposed standard parking spaces, it's not 953 with 38 handicap, it's 1,025 with 29 handicap.
Thank you.
Y'all did receive an emailed version of the traffic impact analysis that was received on Thursday. And please stop me as I go through the presentation, ask whatever questions you may have. As you can see on the screen, the property in question, 799 East Mercury Avenue, is outlined in red. It is bound by Mercury Avenue on the north and Marine Street on the east. The south is Lakeview Ridge Addition. It is owned RTM. The property also along the south, but at the southwest corner of this, is zoned commercial shopping. Commercial general immediately to the west, and the north side zoning on the other side of Mercury is the RTM. Okay, quite a bit of information on this slide, and I'll talk about some additional information that we have. As you can see, the base project data, units, building height, bedrooms, density. Here again, the parking is the corrected number of the 1,025 vehicle spaces and the amenities. A couple of other things of note. This is a multifamily development proposal with 9 two-story duplexes and 27 three-story apartments. There's a mixture of unit types. It ranges from studio up to 5 bedrooms. The building orientation, if you can see on your site plans, and we will be able to better look at this in one of the other site plans, the smaller structures are the duplexes. For the most part, across the south property line, the duplexes are at north, south, east, west setting, perpendicular to the south property line, which is the line that adjoins Lakeview Ridge and the commercial area. The one duplex that is angled is sitting right here. If you can see my mouse working, yes. The duplexes have a minimum 50-foot setback from the south property line, and the apartments have approximately 125-foot setback from the south property line. If you'll notice, the location of the clubhouse, pool, other amenities for common facilities is located in the northwest area of the development. There is no access to marine from the development. All of the access is at 2 points off of Mercury. This is the area of the detention pond. Originally, the detention pond was closer to the south property line. That has been moved north to give extra area of protection, as well as opportunity for some screening and additional landscaping. The landscaping scheme, as you can see here, you can see the trees. You won't be able to see the other items, but it is reflected on the plans. There are strategically placed earth berms with fences atop those earth berms. The fences and earth berms are primarily at the ends of the parking lots. That the idea behind that is to mitigate the light shine from vehicles pulling in there facing south into any of the adjacent properties. Transition area. One of the things about the PUD, and there has been some misunderstanding of this, the PUD, or Planned Unit Development Requirements, state that anytime a PUD is proposed next to a base zoned area, and it gives a table of the different zoning categories that the PUD is proposed next to, there is a required 100-foot transition area. And that purpose and intent of that is so that the uses and densities, et cetera, of one transitions into the uses and densities, et cetera, of the other. With the property to the south, as you saw on the previous slide, being zoned RTM, this PUD, the transition area, that 100-foot area, it can be built in, but it's limited to no more than 25 units per acre, whereas the rest of the PUD could go much higher than that. So that's why it's that transition, to help with the stepping, if you will, from one to the other. I'll talk about transition area a little more. But for right now, within this transition area, the 100 feet from the south property line 100-foot deep into the property. The density that's proposed on this development, they're allowed to have 25 units per acre, like I said. The density in this transition area is proposed is 4 units per acre. There are 2 primary requests that vary from just the standard RTM zoning. One, they are asking for a reduced number of bicycle spaces. You can see in your report 301 are required. They're proposing 290. And the other request is for a building height increase. The duplexes are proposed, let me get to a 3-story. 3-story, the apartments are proposed at 38 feet in height. And the duplexes are proposed at 28 feet in height. The base RTM height requirement is 35 feet maximum. So this will be an increase over the maximum height in just the base RTM is what they're asking for. Couple of things to identify on the building elevation here that you see. This is the duplex elevation. Front, rear, left and right sides. The proposal that you have before you has the duplexes, as I had mentioned earlier, in a north, south, east, west fashion to the property line. The access points and windows as proposed face east-west. They do not face south into the residential neighborhood nor north into the rest of the development, except for that one that's gated. In looking at it, this left side elevation of the duplex has a door. That is not a door to a dwelling unit. We have the building floor plans in the office, and it's not a door to a dwelling unit. It's a door to a utility or closet or a laundry facility or something of that nature, but not a dwelling unit itself. So I just wanted everybody to know that. Okay, line of sight. We have 2 lines of sight that are provided before you this evening, and those paper copies that you have before you are the most recent. This line of sight demonstrates standing in the backyard of a neighborhood or in the 2nd floor window or 3rd floor window of the development and looking at each other. This identifies the property line approximately, and then the landscaping based on the scheme that has been proposed. As you can see, this is almost at level ground elevation. This will be half or more of the property on the eastern side of the property. The next that we have for you shows the differing ground elevations. And again, 3-story, 2-story, trees, property line, backyard, neighborhood. And this is going to be on the western portion of the development or of the property. With the adjacent property to the north being a similar use. The structures are different, but the use is similar. Aspen Heights is the property that's located on the north side of Mercury. And you can see, here's a comparison of the two. The avenue is this piece of property, and Aspen Heights is that. The zoning, RTM, requesting a PUD tonight, and Aspen Heights is RTM with an SUP to allow the single-family structures, because they're only single-family or duplex structures at Aspen Heights. Aspen Heights is 7.5 acres larger. The Avenue has more units. The Avenue has more bedrooms. Therefore, the density of the Avenue is greater than that of Aspen Heights. So is the population density, and we base population density on the number of beds that are proposed, having one person per bed in the proposal. So you can see the direct comparative differences between these two similar developments. Any questions before I go into findings?
I do have one, Paula. You had mentioned the density in the transition zone, allowed being 25 units per acre and the proposed being 4, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just to give me some kind of a feel for this, do you happen to know what the density of the neighborhood is?
Of the entire Lakeview Ridge, all additions?
Yeah.
Yes. The density units per acre is 4.3 units per acre of the entire Lakeview Ridge addition.
Thank you. That helps put it a little bit in perspective for me.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Under the current industrial zoning, what would the setback be, and would there be any fencing or screening requirements for the industrial?
Yes, sir. Under the current zoning, and I'll get up here to this so we can take a look at the zoning map itself. Yes, currently the property is zoned general industrial. The front setback, which would be from Mercury and from Marine, 75 feet. The rear and the side setbacks are the same. They're 40 feet unless you're adjacent to residential, and then it's 75 feet. Any fencing or screening requirements for general industrial next to residential, because that's how the screening and landscaping requirements are. It's not use to use, it's zoning district to zoning district. So general industrial next to residential, visual barrier at 75% opaque is required. That can be in the form of vegetation, berm, or fence minimum 6 feet in height. So that's the requirement, IG to this case in particular, RTM.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before I continue? Then what we have next for you are the findings, and we sort of combined many findings on the same page. The request is consistent with the comp plan in your report. We do identify that the comprehensive plan identifies this area as residential low density, which is conventional single-family, two-family, and low-density multifamily with a density of up to 20 units per acre. The density proposed is less than that allowed of 20. It does provide a buffer to the residential uses to the south. Also, the adjacent residential subdivision is zoned RTM. However, it is developed as single-family. And the PUD does exceed the development intensity of Aspen Heights, which is the development immediately to the north. If y'all have nothing else for me, I understand that there are a number of speakers signed up. Mr. Chairman, please know that staff continues to be available if you have any questions or need any clarifications, and then we'll be back at the end of the public hearing component.
Ms. Dennison. At this time, we will open our public hearing portion, and we'll ask the applicant and those that are wanting to speak in favor of the proposal. We will start this evening with Mr. Hal Ellis.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hal Ellis. I am a lawyer. I am here representing tonight Paul Levine, the developer, Part 7, and Bob Kearns, the owner. My office is at 711 South Husband Street, Stillwater, Oklahoma. What I'd like to do is request a brief rebuttal time or reply time at the end of this presentation. We will have for you tonight Paul Levine of Part 7, who is here from New York, and he will speak to the general information. Roger Ghost, the project engineer, Ted Smith, a valuation expert. We also have available to you Ellen Stevens, a hydrologist, Kim Morris, a traffic engineer, Bob Burchell, the arborist, and Mike Lovitz, the real estate agent. Basically, I'll keep my remarks very brief since we have more technically qualified people to speak to you. This is a significant project for Stillwater, a university community. This project will bring an estimated economic benefit of $1.5 million to our community on an annual basis. That's utilities paid, payroll, things of that nature. $300,000 in direct payroll. This project will have 5 to 6 full-time employees, plus an additional 10 or so resident. It will bring a construction cost somewhere between an estimated $30 and $40 million to our community. It will have the beds, as indicated in the city staff presentation, of around 848, 36 buildings, 293 units. It will have a swimming pool, clubhouse. It will have a significant sports component to it. It'll bring in ad valorem taxes, which benefit our schools. We estimate between $348,000 and $481,000 per year. This is a logical infill between 2 RTM areas, Aspen Heights, Lakeview Ridge. This PUD proposal is vastly better than in trying to use this infill as industrial general, with Aspen Heights to the north and the residential neighborhood to the south. And industrial use of this property would be highly problematic. There have been already in this PUD very significant compromises, increased setback lines, tremendous landscaping along the south border, duplexes in the south transition zone. The 3-story buildings are faced so that the sides of them have no windows and will not intrude into this neighborhood. The clubhouse was purposely placed significantly away from the south neighborhood to provide further distance for those facilities. The landscaping along the south side includes berms, it includes fencing, and it includes significant trees. Thus, I think that this project offers a reasonable compromise to the legitimate concerns of the homeowners to the south, not to have their privacy invaded through the use of these techniques. At this point, I'd like to reserve any further comments until the end and ask Mr. Levine, who is the developer's representative, to speak to you about the project.
Good evening. My name is Paul Levine. I'm one of the principals at Park 7 and responsible for development. Let's see. Let's click on this one. Make it make it full screen. How do I control the slides? There. Okay, great. Thank you. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the company itself. Park 7 has been the principals of Park 7 have been developing, real estate for about 15 years in many states around the country. Developed over 7,000 units. The principals.
Could you speak up just a little bit? Sorry, we've got it.
Sure. Sorry. Myself and 4 other principals in the company have had numerous years' experience at both construction, management, ownership of student housing properties around the country. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about the project itself and what the Avenue buildings look like. First is the Community Amenity Center. In the building here, we'll have a 24-hour, 24/7 secure fitness center, resort-style pool with spa. We have yoga studio, classes for doing, Insanity, P90X, all the things that are out today that students like to do. The equipment inside is all the Life Fitness high-end fitness equipment. And some of the other features inside the clubhouse, we've got a game room, pool tables, ping pong, shuffleboard, as you can see here, a computer center, golf simulator. The whole idea is to create an area where the residents like to congregate, socialize, and spend their time when they're not studying. Here's some more photographs. Also inside the clubhouse, we have a cyber cafe, where we can make meals, that kind of thing, a movie theater. There's conference room for studying or any kind of events we host for them. There's tanning. The site amenities will have either a shuttle bus service, a private bus that we operate to go directly to campus, or we'll look into the options that are available here through either the city or the university. Oftentimes we do a private shuttle just to be able to provide the level of service necessary to keep high ridership. On the site we'll also have basketball courts, sand volleyball, and bike racks. Here's just some photos and some of the amenities inside the unit. The flooring, stainless steel appliances. The look that we've gone here for is more of a contemporary look, which we find has been very well received. Here's some more photos. Every unit, as Paula mentioned, we have studios through 5-bedroom units. Every bedroom has a private bathroom. Included in the rent is cable, internet, TV, and the units are fully furnished, at least in the high 90s is how the tenants prefer to take the units. Here's just an example of how they lay out from an overhead view. So you can see the common areas, the kitchen area with a center island. We've found that that's the way that students like to have their units laid out, with this island type, which is a very social way to set up the unit, and then bedrooms off in a flat style, where you have living on one floor, and an example here of a townhome kind of style where you'll have multi-floor living. As I had mentioned, our experience here in developing and owning student housing spanned over 15 years, again, over 7,000 units. We have a build and hold philosophy, which is shown in the quality of the construction and the management. How we manage, we have a team of seasoned property management professionals with a very proactive head office. One of my partners who has property operations does come out to the properties quite often and make sure that they're being run properly. We'll have 6 full-time employees on site, full-time property manager, assistant property manager, bookkeeper, and a maintenance crew as well. In addition to that, we'll have a community assistance program, which is 10 people that live on site that are the liaison between the tenants in the property management office at times when the property management office is closed. They perform that task and basically are a point of contact if there's any questions among the tenants as to any questions they might have about the property or about the lease, that kind of thing. They also perform the task of leasing agents. Again, on here, property management is available 24/7. We have continuing education of staff. We have a staff handbook, which they all have to get very familiar with, as well as our leases. We do financial background checks, and all the tenants need to have guarantors as well. We diligently enforce our rules and regulations. We have about a 30-page lease. It's a very strict lease that the whole objective is to keep the environment one in which the tenants and the neighbors can enjoy the amenities there and live without being disrupted by noise and that kind of thing. We do hire security patrols to patrol the property certain nights of the week, be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, typically when you may have, an occurrence for noise, that kind of thing. We either do that or there'll be on-site law enforcement will actually reside on-site. We either give them reduced rent to live on-site. And again, the community assistants are available 24/7. We'll have some on call, and they help with any kind of issues that may pop up. That's pretty much presentation here. As you know, our target market is college students. They're predominantly occupied by upperclassmen, a little bit more responsible. If you have any questions, please let me know. Here to answer any that you might have.
Any questions?
Do we wait in terms of questions on landscaping and traffic study till those experts come up, or should?
Will you have experts in each of those areas that
Sure.
would speak?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
At this time,
Roger Ghost.
Roger, okay.
Roger Ghost, 113 East 8th, project engineer. Pretty much Paula's staff's done a really good job of going through the site plan that we presented and the comparison table of what RTM requires and what we're requesting and where we're requesting some variances or changes to that. I have Ellen Stevens with us tonight, a hydrologist who will be doing all the calculations and the detailed work on the runoff, stormwater, and we'll be engineering the piping system, the ponds, whatever, however this comes out as we get into it. Ken Morse is here with us tonight. He's a traffic engineer. You've already gotten his traffic analysis. We're proactive and went ahead and had that prepared before y'all had to ask for it. And then Bob Burchell's here, who's arborist. There's been quite a few questions about what kind of trees you're planting, what size trees, just a lot of tree questions. I mean, there's a lot of them on the plan, so we brought him in. So if you all have those kind of questions, instead of me, I know Greenside goes up, let's have the expert here. And then Mike Lovitz, if you do have some real estate questions. Are there any questions related to the engineering of the site?
Go ahead. I've already had one turn. Go ahead.
I've already had one turn too.
Flip a coin.
I'll get into the landscaping first. My question is this. The point system, I don't understand at all. What I need to know is what caliber trees are you gonna plant initially? What is the spacing? What will they grow into? So I can have an understanding in my mind of the initial screening versus the screening when the trees mature, which my experience in the past has been can take a while. So if the landscaper can come up and describe that for me, I would appreciate it.
Let me help you start on that. Paula, do you have that, tell me how to get that sightline exhibit? I was responsible for the sightline exhibit and then bounced off of Bob what kind of trees. Okay. The main concern here was that the trees that, not at the end of the parking lot. We started this thing a year ago. One of the things I heard real loud and clear was we don't want car lights in our windows. I understand. I lived in a place that had car lights in my windows every night when I was a kid. So at the end of the parking lots, we proposed a 6-foot wood fence to screen those car lights out of the houses to the south. In the landscape plan, we've also proposed photinias on the neighbor side of the fence so that they're just not looking at a fence.
You proposed a 6-foot fence. That is not what's in this presently. So
Okay.
you'll get into that.
That's what we did. Then there was a proposal to take out, a request to take out the fence. I discussed with staff, hey, we put the fence in there to make sure we don't have the car lights. So what you see tonight, what we've gotten to so far is we're going to put a berm at the end of the parking lot with a 4-foot wood fence on top of that and photinia on the neighbor's side of that, so it's something that's green, not just a fence. That was to take care of the parking lot lights. The next issue that came up is between those buildings we have a green area, and if you stand at a window and you lean real hard or look towards the neighborhood, you're looking at least 125 to 140 feet over at those neighbors' houses. In that open area between the buildings, not where the parking lots are, but that other backyard, we've proposed an evergreen type tree. And I had proposed a cedar tree. I think Bob's got a better idea. And those will be on a berm. And I'm going to let him address the type of tree.
Okay.
They're not eastern red cedars. They're something that will maintain green and will grow. And we've asked him what size, number one, and he's done some research. What can we even buy around Oklahoma? You know, what do the nurseries have in stock? I will tell you this tree right here, to scale, and that tree is actually not on the berm. It's the other shot that has them on a berm. That tree is between 12 and 15 feet tall, the top of that tree. This one, the next one, is 18 feet tall to scale, and that one's 25 feet tall. So just to give you an idea of what's there. So you want me to get Bob up here now?
Yes.
Okay. Bob?
My name is Bob Burchell. I'm a consulting urban forester out of Oklahoma City.
You heard the discussion, and the discussion was related to the tree size. What size tree are you going to put in initially? What caliber tree? Have you gotten to that?
Well, as far as the caliper, the evergreen trees generally are sold by height.
Yeah.
So I would suspect that they're going to be somewhere around 3 inches in caliper, which would put them at least 8 to 12 feet tall. And we've discussed different types of junipers, but something like Carnardi juniper or a tree like that that's going to have a denser foliage, and
So it'll be 8 to 12 foot tall initially planted?
that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay. And then what height do they eventually grow into?
Easily 20 to 25 feet tall.
And you've got the width of the tree, and so the width of the tree is X, and will they grow together?
Yes, they will grow together. The trees are conical shaped, so they're wider at the bottom and taper to a point at the top. So, but they will grow together.
Do you have another landscape question? I've got a quick one if you.
Yeah, I don't have any other landscaping
Okay.
questions right now.
Paula, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in PUD, that landscaping requirement is, I don't want to say perpetual, but that is a requirement. So if a neighbor is concerned about a tree dying off and not getting replaced, can you speak to that just for a minute?
Yes, correct. In the PUD, and I can get back, oh, missed it, here to the site. The landscape plan that is acted on, if with approval, the landscaping is a part of this requirement and a part of this plan, then that holds the developer to maintaining this plan. So, you know, next fall, after it's built, drought in Oklahoma, 60 days of 112-degree temperatures, whatever the case may be, and some trees don't make it, then the developer is going to go back out there and replant those trees.
Okay.
Yes, so it is a continual, keep up the components of the plan that are.
It's not a one-time
approved.
and everything gets okay and you don't see it anymore. Yeah.
Right, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper? You have additional questions?
Does anybody else have any questions?
Well, I have one, but it's not on landscape. So.
You got the berm and the 4-foot tall fence, and you got the, I'll call them shrubs in the resident side of the fence. And those shrubs grow up to what height?
Photinias can easily grow up to 12 feet or more, depending on whether they're pruned back or not, but they can get to be easily 10, 12 feet tall.
This may or may not be a landscaping question, but why was the fence limited to only 4 foot tall?
Originally, it was 6 feet. When I discussed with staff, there was one proposal to take out all the fencing. And one of the reasons was, well, it was just too hard. I mean, there's just this hard fence all the way along there. So put in berms and vegetation. I still wanted to get a fence in there to make sure we had blockage of the light. 4 feet on a 30-inch berm will catch all the car lights that go through there unless somebody's really jacked their vehicle up. I mean, even a 4-foot fence on top of the curb is going to catch the car lights. But we're putting it on up on a berm to make sure that we have that coverage. That's why it's 4 feet.
Have you done a preliminary grading plan in terms of when cars are going in your parking lot? Isn't it a higher elevation as you head north?
It won't be when the final grading plan is done because we need to maintain the flatness along these long buildings. I mean, we can't start at 0 or 0.5% at the north end, and if we're diving that thing down 2 to 3 feet.
I see what my concern is when they go in, when they're on the north side and start going in the parking lot, are those lights higher and will get over that fence is my concern.
We didn't check that, and that's a good point. I'd be glad to put a 6-foot fence in. I was just trying to respond to staff's concern. That's a good point.
That's all my questions on landscaping.
I guess I kind of have a site layout question, Roger, if you can get back to the
Well, I'll
site
try.
plan.
That's close enough.
That's close. kind of a question, kind of after I got the site plan and reviewed it, looked at circulation, public sidewalks, that kind of thing. Obviously, if we look at the southwest corner, maybe that southwest parking lot right there, correct me if I'm wrong, but that actually, to the south of that, that's west of the neighborhood.
Neighborhood ends right there at that mark.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. My question to you is, to help with circulation, when that commercial track on the corner develops, would it be possible to do some type of a non-motorized vehicle pedestrian type cut through right there?
Already hoping that happens.
Okay, and
There's-
this theory being, it's gonna
They're
provoke
not,
folks to,
that's not, that piece of ground's not far enough along to say, yes, we can do it. But Mr. Levine and I've already talked about it, and we're even making sure of our grades down on that end, that we're not so darn high that you can't get down through there accessibly.
I just thought, when that does develop, that would sure cut a long trip for folks having to
Yes.
walk.
Yeah, and someday that's going to happen, and at that time we'll make sure there's a good, our plan is to make sure there's a good sidewalk through there.
Okay.
I don't want to be held to that at this point because we don't know what's happening there and where they might prefer access when that's developed. And if that doesn't happen before, we're doing our final, we're going to get one in there.
Okay.
It just,
I just think it would, obviously the intersection there at Perkins Road and Lakeview, it's set up for pedestrians, unlike some of the other ones. It has the crossing signals, all of that, crosswalks in place. And I think if we could promote the foot traffic and or even bicycles potentially to go down to that corner, it would be a good deal.
there's good potential that a bike and pedestrian corridor out of here through some kind of commercial strip could get down there to 6th and Perkins and be a lot better than that bicycle trying to get on Perkins Road or come along Lakeview and then back up.
Okay, just an observation. I'm glad you're ahead of me.
Before we ask Mr. Ghostin, does anyone have any more questions for Mr. Birchall or?
This one might involve him. I don't think so.
Ask it, they can always.
It's a simple question. There's been some discussion. Roger, can you tell me where the ending parking spaces are in relation maybe to their, like the wooden fence that are behind there or the property line, in terms of where the ending parking space is, distance from that fence in those backyards, and the turnaround area, kind of where those ending curbs are at?
Those curbs where'd that thing go? Yeah. Those curbs right along there are about 30 feet off of the property line.
The parking space or the
curb.
turnaround?
The south side of those duplexes is at 50 feet. And you've got about 1.5 parking spaces plus a drive aisle around the end. So, come off of that.
That's considerably less than some of the earlier drawings.
Yes, we reduced all the parking. We reduced the number of parking stalls from the sketch plat. We reduced these parking stalls, the closeness to the property line. And I'll say as we get into the grading and things, we may reduce them another row of parking, which would pull it up another 10 feet. We've got plenty of parking. This thing is way overparked. The owner has suggested 1.1 is his minimum. He wants 10% more parking than what's required. And we're above that considerably. So we've got room to drop some parking spaces, unless you all say, hey, we want 20% more parking. That's...
No plans for basketball goals at the end of those courts down?
No, sir, and one of the differences when this first came out, we had dumpsters at the end of these parking lots. All the dumpsters have been moved to the main drive. So that truck it goes through there, and they're set up, whether they're a rear load or a front load, they can go one way or the other, and they can pull all the dumpsters along the main drive. They don't have to go into the parking lots. They don't have to be down here by the neighborhood banging around.
Roger, since we were on the topic of lighting, could you talk a little bit about the lighting for the parking lots themselves? Is there any parking lot lighting proposed,
There's no,
like lights on poles or anything like
no
that?
pole lights planned in the parking lots.
Okay,
Those will just be off the buildings.
just, okay, sconce lights or something?
Yes. We may have some light, honestly, we have addressed the lighting. If we had it, it would be only along the main drive as far as pole lights, but everything else is on the buildings.
Okay.
Roger, have you guys talked about, there's the one duplex that doesn't set with the south property line that's twisted a little bit. Have you talked about evening that up, or is that cause for big engineering concern one way or the other? The way the windows on that wouldn't line up with the back?
You know, it's, this whole thing, we increased the tree cover here because of those windows. As an engineer, I'd just rather see that thing perpendicular, but it looks really nice curvilinear. But, I mean, we can turn that building if you all say that's what we need to do, those buildings. But we were trying to just be a little more radial to the road.
How many additional feet, excuse me, off of versus the others is that one?
That duplex is about, it looks to me like it's about 70 feet versus 50 feet.
Do any of these structures have balconies?
Yes.
Which ones?
Okay. This drawing is tell me if I'm off on this. This is the front one, Paul, or the back? Just the 3 stories have balconies at the second floor level.
Okay.
And these are the front elevations. This is the stair tower. The second and third floor are accessed through a second floor door and an internal stairway. This is a rear balcony off of those units. There's a balcony back there and a rear stairway. I think mostly for fire safety and be able to get out of there.
So the sight line from that balcony only on the apartment probably wouldn't be able to see.
All of our sight lines were from these windows right here.
Yeah.
We didn't sight line from the balconies.
Okay.
So, I mean, the sight line on the 3 stories would even be lower,
Right.
because of the
Right.
balcony. That cover you?
Covered that question.
Any more questions? You're on a roll.
This kind of stuff.
You know me, right?
I enjoy it.
Give me the rationale on why you want a reduction in bicycle parking.
They don't find, the operating company, we've talked about this, they don't find there's that many bikes that are being parked outside because of the weather, because of the expense of the bicycles. A lot of properties around the country, and not just their properties, but student housing, they're parking their bikes underneath the stairways in this area here. Honestly, I don't think the parks that we've got provided outside will even be used, because these bicycles the students drive today are so darned expensive, they don't want to leave them out there.
I can tell you I disagree with that, because I live in an apartment complex, and I heard the same story, and every bicycle has connected to bicycle racks around campus, close to campus. And this is not close to campus. I've had a different experience with outside bicycle racks. I agree that there are several students that have expensive bikes and they park them under that area and they put them inside, but I've heard the same rationale now for a while, and my experience has not been the same.
Okay. Is your apartment parked to the required parking? Do you know?
What?
Is the required number of parking spaces or the bike racks that you have in conformance with code?
In the place that I am right now, which is Prime Place at 3rd and Hester, they gave an exception to reduce the number of bicycle racks, and they are overfilled
Okay.
with bicycles with the same rationale.
Well, that's good history. It really is. I mean, because
So-
we haven't seen that in other sort of further out spots. I know I increased the bicycle parking up here by the clubhouse, figuring the people were going to ride their bike up here so they could exercise, that kind of thing. And if we do, if we're successful in getting a bus stop somewhere in here, we'll want to make sure we have our bike parking up there also.
Yes.
That's a great point.
And you're talking about 11 bicycle spots, basically, from required to proposed. Is that right?
Yeah, it's something that's
301 to
Yeah.
290.
It's 11.
Yeah.
it wasn't many, but we were going to go for more. But what else?
Any more?
You want to talk to our traffic engineer?
I had some questions for him, but I feel like
Hey, you go on. We want all your questions answered. These people don't have anything to do tonight, do we?
You did your
so
Okay, go ahead.
on the traffic engineering study, we've got the traffic count. Good evening.
It's Ken Morris, traffic engineer.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Ken Morris with KME Traffic and Transportation, Edmond, Oklahoma. Can I take my tie off? I feel like I'm over.
Sure.
I'm Mike Buchert. I'm a civil engineer that works at Oklahoma State University.
I thought I recognized your name,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So, your traffic count on the street immediately north of this is 4,000 vehicles per day, approximately?
That is on the west end of Mercury,
Okay.
and most of that is from the Aspen Heights. On the east end, it's only about 1,250. I personally did the Aspen Heights traffic study also, and so I went back and did some analysis after it was open. For one, I overestimated the amount of traffic, so there was more transit usage and more students traveling outside the peak hour, which is normal. I also looked at that east entrance that comes out on Marine. I thought a lot more residents would come straight down Marine to Lakeview. That's not the case. Looking at the traffic counts out there and observing it for about 3 hours in the morning and the afternoon, there are only about 10 or 12 vehicles that use that entrance during the afternoon. And so most of the traffic will travel on Mercury over to Perkins and use that signal to access Perkins.
Sir, one of the questions I had, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
I did read your traffic study, and your report made the conclusion or assumption that most of the people from this area to get to campus would go straight down Perkins Road to Hall of Fame and then go west.
Yes.
Which I think is like 6 traffic lights. And I'm not so sure that I agree with that. I think a lot of people would actually turn right on Lakeview and go west because, you know, I avoid Perkins Road like a lot of people do, just if I can. And so it would be smoother to go down Lakeview if I were going to campus, and especially knowing college students, they wait till the last minute to go to class. They're probably going to go to the path of least resistance, least traffic lights. They would go west on Lakeview and then either take Husband or or Boomer Road, Washington, whatever that is called there, into campus. So I didn't know if you had also looked at that.
Yes, sir. I did take some of the traffic over to Washington because that comes down into the student parking areas around campus. The reason I took most of the traffic down Perkins, there is a coordinated system on Perkins, and the city's getting ready to upgrade that, so hopefully it'll be even better progressing traffic. And so the majority of the students, I feel, unless they know those shortcuts coming down Husband or going over to Washington, will probably come down to Hall of Fame and over. Some of them may even go down to 6th Street, Highway 51, and if they want to go down on the south end of campus. But it was my feeling the majority would stay in that traffic flow on Perkins because of that.
Any more questions, traffic related?
No more questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have one?
Yeah, I want members of the public to realize that this is that traffic study. It's 62 pages. It's the first one I've ever read, and it's fascinating. I learned a lot. Amazing statistical thing, and once you can kind of break it down into what does this mean, there was some good summation and all of that, but I did want to mention to the other board members and to yourself, I learned. I saw this and I thought, man, somebody with some degree of IQ is going to have to figure this out. But I did learn a lot, and I kind of equated it to the fact of when Merc Cruiser was full staff out there, and all of those people got off at once. And the historical numbers that you had from back in 2010 and prior to when all that was going on, and the thought processes of when these people move, and you know, there's 0.34 movements per bed per day per man during this peak deal. I thought that was an incredible piece of work. I mean, I had never been around this type of thing before, and I thought it would have nominal value to a layperson, but I did feel like I felt better, and I did have a few concerns. Are we supposed to address what might be city-related concerns to them? I'll ask you a question, and if this isn't the proper form.
We'll shut you down.
One of my number one concerns was the Lakeview Street kind of comes a bit over a hill there as it approaches Marine. Marine is the north side.
Yes, sir.
And I think there has been some historical accidents there, and there will obviously be an increase to traffic there, and y'all documented it amazingly. But I was surprised at how that averages out and how you referenced either other university data, Auburn and all of that, to do all of that. But if things come down to where some of these, like the right turn lane in your recommendation up on Mercury and some of that, is this something that we would include in our motion, John? I assume in the PUD deal is that these are the types of things that are spec'd out in that, or?
Well, the study has to meet the standards that the city has established. And
Who does that?
It's actually done administratively. It's reviewed by Development Services and by the traffic engineer, and that is ongoing as we speak.
So Dr. Jason Peak will do a
Dr. Peak
thorough
is looking
review.
at it, yes.
And he'll get with the traffic engineer. If he's got any other things he needs to have incorporated, then he will be the one that will require that to be.
This
We
is my
could make
first
that-
foray into this depth of that traffic type.
And we could make that as a recommendation if it chooses to go forward. We can make that have to be approved before it sees it council. So,
I have no question, but I just wanted to tell you that there is some value to what we just read here.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
There was a lot of things that it really cleared up. I think I would have had a lot more questions or specific concerns about certain things. It created, a lot of questions as well, but
okay.
that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along that line, we've already, Ken's already been talking to Dr. Peak, and we've had some questions about the entrances and exits, if we need the acceleration, de-acceleration lane, if we need the right, left turns going out. Those things are on the table. If those are supported in the report, we expect those to be put in there. So it was very, the data in there was very interesting, and sort of the habits of what people do. I found it very interesting. Anything else? Dr. Stevens is here if you need to ask her any questions about drainage. She'll be the one doing the detailed hydrology. The majority of it's going to go to this pond here with a controlled outlet, and it'll get there by storm sewers.
You wouldn't like the hydrologist to come up and ask any questions?
I don't have any questions. She didn't provide a report.
I mean, the city is, according to this report, the city has already accepted the preliminary drainage study. And so, but then a final drainage study will come forward with the final permit.
Yes. Okay. With the final permit and design. Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have a couple more people on our list if they would like to speak. Mr. Bob Kearns.
I think next we'd like to have Ted.
Tedson.
Good evening.
I'm Ted Smith. I'm a real estate appraiser. I've been appraising in Stillwater since the mid-1970s. I've watched a lot of Stillwater grow. And although I've been engaged by the applicants, I'm not an advocate for whether the project goes or not. But I am here to answer your questions. I have been appraising houses, backing up to apartments for the last 30-plus years. And I'll talk very generally. If we want to get into more specifics, I'll be glad to answer questions. But you can just look at Stillwater, look at how it's grown. You can start on Perkins Road in the 1970s when they built Monticello Apartments, row of duplexes, Andrews Hills, 5th Western Section. On the south side of Redbud, you've got Tamarack Apartments, row of duplexes, and Andrews Hills 3rd Western Section. You can go north. You get up to East Ridge as a residential subdivision. They built Chapel Hill Apartments adjacent to the subdivision. Next north is the old, the lift, Century 21. That was in there for 20, 30 years before they put in East Ridge 2nd Section. You can go up to Parkview Estates. As you enter Parkview Estates, you've got duplexes and garden homes, which are like apartments. They're attached two-story buildings. University Estates. I actually lived out there when they built the 3-story condos that have never been sold as condos, always rented as apartments, at the entrance on one side, duplexes at the entrance on the other side. Go down to Pecan Hill. Pecan Hill on the west side of Stillwater off of Range Road. They've got duplexes, then they go into the houses. They've just built Primrose up there as a retirement center that's being rented out as apartments. It backs up to single family. Now it's too soon. I haven't seen anything happen. But if it's like everything else, once it's there, the market doesn't really seem to care. Houses vary more for the condition they're in, for their amenities that they offer, and you can get this in any subdivision. You can get highs and lows. But I have not been able to isolate it because it backed up to a multifamily project. Now, if I do have a concern with value, it would probably be what it is now, not knowing what would go in that IG zoning. Because it could be somebody coming in for ASCO, that whether they did fabrication, painting, or any kind of material work, or even just a car service garage, that they start out at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning with air ratchets. There could be a lot of things, and the uncertainty there is probably what is most scary. Once the project is put in, and those projects that I talked to you about, and even if you go down on 19th with Cedar Oaks, Westbrook Place, when they went in, the requirements for landscaping and considerations for view amenities and all that were not nearly as great. Yet those adjacent neighborhoods have seemed to fare very well. Right now, one of the most interesting things that I see is those new apartments that were built behind Walmart out west in Traden Heights. I believe it's 51 at Traden. A large project. The busiest subdivision, the most successful one, I say, in sheer numbers of houses being built and sold, is right across the street from it. The developer, Ideal Homes, is happy enough with it that back in October, they bought another 10 acres to put in another 30 houses. And then beginning of this year, they picked up the other 33 acres, which goes all the way down to Westbrook. And actually, by the time they're done, they're going to open up the street that's right in front of my house is going to go into that subdivision with the traffic there. But they're building those houses. They're selling them for good money. They're happy. And, you talk about traffic studies. That whole area, the apartment complex and the subdivisions, are all fed by a single street right now, which they will take a lot of that off it in the future. But value has to do with perception. People get in the car with their realtor, they drive down the street, the realtor shows them a house here, a house here. If they said they wanted to be in the northeast quadrant of town, and they decide and they buy the house they want. Sometimes there might be a value, I'd really pay a little more to live in this, or this one was updated more and they pay a little more or less. But we get those houses selling. And, we're fortunate to be in Stillwater. We don't have vacancy problems. We don't have blighted areas. But I can't say that backing up to an apartment complex will diminish the value of the houses in the adjoining subdivision. And especially looking at their project, it's well planned. They're working very hard with the city. I'm open to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith, when you think initially it would probably take a hit?
What we're dealing with here is fear of the unknown. My favorite story with that, if I can have a minute, when the swine farm relocation was announced, my phone started ringing. Everybody wanted to know, what's this going to do to my property? What's this going to do to my property? And I just sidestepped most of it because nobody wanted me to pay to do a study or anything. My last call that came through was a woman who lived in College Gardens, near campus. And I used to live right behind Westwood School. And about once every year or two, on a still night with a very slight breeze out of the southwest, you knew who your neighbor was over there. But it didn't happen often, didn't affect things. I told her, when that swine farm was built west of town, nobody lived near it. It was all out of town in the country. And through the 1960s and 70s, they built all those houses on the other side of Western. They built the Kettle restaurant adjacent to it. They built the Holiday Inn, but it was already there and it didn't scare people. Yet the thought of a new swine farm, state-of-the-art, won't smell as bad, no houses upwind from it because the university would be there. And I finally, I looked at the map and I go, holy, you live closer to the old one than you're going to live to the new one. She just goes, oh. So I don't know if that answers your question or anything.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak?
No.
Okay.
Would like to reserve a little time.
Okay, we'll do that at the end. At this time, we'll close the public hearing for those in favor of. At this time, we'll open the public hearing for those that are in against. First on our list is Kristen Holdeman.
And is there a time limit? I can't remember.
We just asked to be as brief as possible.
Okay, which I will be. Kristen Holdeman, 1018 Lauren Lane. My property abuts 799 Mercury Avenue. I'd like to ask the members of the commission to take a moment and think about your home and the neighborhood in what you live. What is around your home? Who lives around your home? Why, of all the places in Stillwater, did you choose to live in that house? And finally, do you feel safe and secure with your family in the place that you live? Almost 2 years ago, my husband and I were faced with these same questions as we began thinking about where we would purchase our first home. We had been residents of Stillwater for several years, and after my husband was offered a position with a local company, decided to stay in Stillwater for several more. The house hunting process included many homes, but there were a few definite things we wanted out of the place we chose. We knew we wanted to live in a quiet neighborhood. Having recently graduated from college and no longer wishing to live the college life, we knew we did not want to be near campus, but away from it. At some point, we will have children and wanted to find a place where they would be safe playing out in the yard without having to worry about too many cars or who would be watching them play. House hunting brought many homes that didn't quite meet our criteria. One house we gave a chance, hoping something could take away from the eyesore outside, but nothing could deter from the massive water tower across the street from the front yard. Then one day our search brought us to the house we are living in now. Our home is in a quiet neighborhood on the northeast corner of Stillwater. We are close to the things we need, but away from the noise and busyness of campus life. Seeing my neighborhood of young families, I have no reason to feel unsafe, and the privacy fence around my backyard ensures that any children we have will be safe to play without having to worry about who is watching them. Now the things my husband and I searched to find within the city of Stillwater and found with great joy is being threatened. 2 stories, 50 feet from my property line means that anyone in an adjacent building can see everything I and eventually my children will be doing in the backyard. The quiet that attracted us to the neighborhood, since it is so far from student housing, may come to a complete stop. A complete and total change with the development that is admittedly geared solely towards students and is now a potential second development of its kind in our area. Here, my privacy fence that I love becomes worthless. The idea that I still get to live in a quiet neighborhood is gone. Now I'm thinking maybe we should have chosen the water tower in our front yard so that I wouldn't have to worry about looking at a 3-story apartment complex and concrete walls in my backyard. What about the equity I'm working to put into my home to make it better? Will all the work I'm putting into my home with each passing year even be worth the effort if I'm forced to sell my home for thousands less than what I paid when no one else wants to look at the smaller complex either? And I know what the appraiser just came up and said, that the market doesn't really seem to care, but that is because there are very few options for the working professionals in the city of Stillwater to find any homes that they can purchase, because there are so many that are currently rented out or require such a massive remodel after being 40 or 50 years old or having students live in them that it's hard to find something of quality. I know, we spent a long time looking. It is through all these thoughts that I started researching to see if there was any way to protect my home, livelihood, and the quality of life we paid for and wish to preserve. This is when I realized that is where you, the Planning Commission, have been put into place to protect my rights as a working class citizen of Stillwater. I saw a recent article in the news press written by Paula Dennison giving an explanation of zoning, and it gave me cause to hope in the leaders put in place to protect my rights. In the article, she stated, zoning is the separating of land uses into compatible groups so the community can balance conflicting interests and mitigate negative impacts. It promotes public health, safety, and general welfare. Then towards the end, she wrote, zoning, protects property rights and values and balances competing rights. You can imagine my relief in reading these words as I realize that the Planning Commission's main focus is to make sure the best for all parties is achieved, and that my rights as a property owner have a much larger voice through this process than it may have otherwise had. Imagine then when I found the Comprehensive Community Development Plan, how much more I was given cause to hope, because now I have found where the Commission and City Council are going to seek to develop Stillwater in a, quote, compact and contiguous development pattern and establish conservation and enhancement of existing development and assurance of compatibility of new development with existing development. Both of these statements are listed in Step 1 of the Plan Utilization Primer, along with this next statement that also appears in the 3 steps that follow. If a proposed development is not consistent with the general intent of the development policies, the proposal should justify the benefit to. First, the proposal must be justified to the community. Since this development seeks only to aid in student housing, then you must consider the question, do we really need more housing specifically for students? With other complexes being recently finished or in the process of adding on, is it necessary to have space for 848 more students, especially this far away from campus? Where is the housing meant for all the professionals who have and will be looking for in Stillwater? Secondly, the proposal must be justified to the sub-area, which I understand us to be in the emerging development sub-area for our neighborhood. The comprehensive plan states, future residential development should be single-family primarily. The placement of dwelling units should involve compact arrangements, whether associated with estate or smaller lots, where higher densities of up to 8 net dwelling units per acre are appropriate. The currently proposed plan is asking for 9.5 units per acre in an area where it will not be appropriately placed. It is the proposed unit development plan, or in the proposed unit developer plan, the developer states 4 times that they know their development is not consistent with our neighborhood in its use, and that is clear support for the complex's inappropriateness in our area. Thirdly, we come to the final application where the proposal must be justified in comparison to the development standards laid out in the plan. While the proposed complex does seem to be in alignment with every requirement for what a village-type housing development should have, it neglects to be contingent with the area around it on a massive scale. In the introduction to the goal and objectives for plan infrastructure for guiding development, the plan states, at the same time we seek compatibility, sustainability, predictability, and a quality of life with the natural and built environment. Who, looking upon the area surrounding the land at 799 Mercury Avenue, would find it predictable to say, I envision a great 2- and 3-story complex for student housing. Reason would dictate that no one would, because it simply does not fit with the single-story, single-family homes on the south side and double-story multifamily housing on the north side. Predictability would have a plan to establish single-story housing within 100 feet of existing single-story housing and double-story housing to be adjacent to the already existing double-story housing. To allow anything to the contrary would create an ill-planned and awkwardly laid out corner of Stillwater that would not even meet with the goal of being aesthetically pleasing upon entering our town. Not to mention that more student housing so far away from campus is illogical in its own right. In closing, I ask that you, as the appointed leaders of development within Stillwater, would take time to consider all the aspects you signed off in the comprehensive community development plan to truly judge whether or not this complex, as it is currently proposed, meets all points of compatibility. I am not against the betterment of Stillwater through development, but I am against development that proves to be in such disagreement with the surrounding areas. I am asking that you take into consideration the effect this misuse would have on the more than 1,000 residents living around the property in question, and that you would be the guardians you were put in place to be and protect our health, safety, quality of life, and general welfare that you have stated you would do your best to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Bridget Miller.
My name is Dr. Bridget Miller, and I currently own the home at 910 East Lauren Lane. And for reference, my house is on the north side of Lauren Lane, immediately adjacent to the lot in question. And I've come here tonight to voice my strong opposition to the proposed PUD and subsequent map amendment at 799 East Mercury Avenue that would make it possible for an 848-bed mega apartment complex to be developed on that land. I would also like to put a human face to those who would be affected by such a rezoning. The Stillwater Planning Commission should seriously consider how this densely populated development will affect the current residents of Lakeview Ridge and the surrounding neighborhoods. Let me tell you a little bit about Lakeview Ridge subdivision for those of you who've never been out there to visit. And if anybody wants to come by, we'd be more than happy to give you a tour. We're a quiet neighborhood of 106 single-family homes. My neighbors are coaches, professors, teachers, engineers, stay-at-home moms, retirees, graduate students, business owners, and young professionals. It's not unusual for the kids of the neighborhood to be engaged in a competitive game of hide-and-go-seek outside their homes, between the houses, and it's generally safe for them to ride their bikes around the internal neighborhood streets. Many of us purchased our homes because we liked the location and character of Lakeview Ridge. It is difficult, if not impossible, to find a home of that size, that quality, age, and within the price range anywhere in Stillwater. Many of my neighbors looked at 20, 30, or 40 homes before finally settling in Lakeview Ridge. I did not arbitrarily buy my house. It was a purposeful choice based on a number of factors. As far as physical structure goes, I picked my home because of the fantastic natural light I get when all of my window shades are open. Most of the main living areas, my kitchen, living room, and my main bedroom, are along the north side of my house. This is important because these spaces directly face the proposed site for the avenue and will be completely exposed by my open window shades if this map amendment goes through. There will be little to no privacy in the spaces where I spend 95% of my time when I'm inside my house. As far as the physical location, my house is perfect for me. It's a quiet neighborhood of newer homes, and the close proximity to Boomer Lake is ideal as I'm an active runner and cyclist. And I would somewhat disagree with the walkability of that intersection at Perkins and Lakeview. Yes, there are crosswalks, but it is darn dangerous in the morning. And I've got all kinds of blinky lights and reflective clothing on, and it's a death march from there into the neighborhood. So if we could get sidewalks, that'd be awesome. Lakeview Ridge is also far enough away from OSU that I can live in a neighborhood that's not overpopulated with students, but still close enough that I can navigate to and from work pretty quickly. The proposed PUD affects me personally, and I oppose it for a number of reasons, all of which are exacerbated by the fact that Aspen Heights is now up and running north of Mercury. First and foremost, I'm concerned about my personal privacy and my safety. I purchased my home almost 10 years ago, and I have never felt threatened or concerned because my home is nestled among other professionals, young families, and retirees. You just have to look out in the audience to know who we are. For the record, and to understand the scale and impact these multi-story buildings have on our single-family homes, I can look out my bedroom window right now, and I can see the first floor windows at Aspen Heights. And from my kitchen, I can clearly see into their second floor windows. And Aspen Heights is over a quarter of a mile away. It's a quarter of a mile beyond my back fence. The avenue wants to build taller structures closer to my house, some of them within 50 feet of my back fence. Even though the buildings might be angled, and the apartment tenants on the second and I believe that the apartment tenants on the second and third floor will still be able to see directly into my backyard and into my house. This threat to my personal safety and my privacy is significant. My second concern centers around the impact on my property value and the character of the neighborhood. Having this type of high-density housing in such close proximity will all but eliminate the charm and character that drew me and most of my neighbors to Lakeview Ridge in the first place. I'm the first and only homeowner of my home, which I purchased in August of '04, and I was probably one of the first 15 residents to move into the neighborhood. We have a homeowners association that works diligently to maintain the current charm of the neighborhood. Allowing large multifamily dwellings to be built so close to our quiet neighborhood will cast quite a shadow over our little community. The lights and the noise from the proposed housing unit cannot peacefully coexist with our single-family community so close. I can hear parties at Aspen Heights, I hear the fireworks, I hear the noise, and again, they're a quarter of a mile away. I fear that rezoning this area will turn Lakeview Ridge into another Park Meadows, a previously thriving family neighborhood that was dwarfed and forever changed when condos and apartments were built in their backyard. My only recourse in this situation is to come here tonight and voice my concerns directly to the individuals charged with making development recommendations to the City Council. I urge you to put yourself in my shoes. I bet you know your neighbor. And maybe they've lived next to you forever. And maybe they even have a vantage point to see into your house via one of your windows. Now imagine that you have 25 or 50 or 75 or more pairs of eyes always able to see you in your house when you're reading a book or cooking dinner or talking on the phone. Can you imagine how that feels? That is what I have to look forward to if you move forward with this map amendment. I did not buy my house with the expectation that there would eventually be an apartment complex in my backyard, and I shouldn't have to live in a prison with all my blinds always closed so that my new neighbors aren't able to watch me sitting in my own home. Creating a ribbon of space zoned RTM in the middle of an industrial park for the development of Aspen Heights was problematic. Expanding that RTM zoning south and closer to our neighborhood, though it's zoned RTM, it's legally non-compliant because we're single-family homes, will only make this problem worse. And I disagree with the transition zone. Maybe technically it's a buffer zone and 100 feet, but it won't feel like that to our neighborhood. I ask that you vote down the proposed PUD and subsequent map amendment. I am confident that the problems that will certainly develop if this land is rezoned far outweigh any benefits. I've been a professor at OSU and a Stillwater resident and homeowner for almost 10 years. And I support the growth of this community, but not when the burden of that growth costs the current residents their privacy, their sense of safety, their financial investment, and their quality of life.
Thank you, Bridget. Emily Snow.
Hi, my name is Emily Snow. I live at 818 East Lauren Lane. My property backs up right to where this development would come in. Throughout this whole process, we've been told we just need to take this. You just need to do this as part of the residence. We've been told that there's really no point in fighting it, that it's just going to happen regardless. As you can see, we haven't really heeded that advice very well. I'm going to try not to repeat what other people have said because they've touched on it so beautifully and so eloquently. But I just want you to know we are the future of the city. We are the young professionals. We are the teachers, the professors. We are the people that are going to take the city into the future. If you keep building temporary housing, you're only going to get temporary residents. We need to move forward in a smarter way. And this just does not seem to be the way it's going to happen. I purchased my home in 2011. I had a reasonable expectation that the land to the north of me that was designated as industrial general would be used for that purpose, or likely not at all. It terrifies me to think that what I tried so hard to not live next to is what I'm going to end up living next to. I saw 48 different homes in this town before I purchased the one that I have. So you can call me picky, but hey, it's the way it is. Just to close, I just want to say that I would like to think that each of you chose to become a public servant because you wanted to fight for the little guy. You wanted to help move the city into the future, and you wanted to help provide a balance between economic growth and population growth. And I think to vote against this rezoning would reaffirm those values and promote them as well. And it would send a message that you listen to your citizens, that you do things that make sense, and that you do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Jack Snow.
Hi, my name is Jack Snow. I live at 818 East Lauren Lane with my mom, and I'm here to speak on behalf of all the children who live in my neighborhood. That is my friend Rokas and his sister Gabia, and my friend Tyler, who's in my grade, and his 14-year-old brother. There's another patch of woods down the street from our house, and we like to play in there. We have trees, and we have forts built. We have trails and all sorts of stuff, and I'm not sure if you know what airsoft guns are. They're kind of like little miniature BB guns, but they shoot plastic at the speed of light. It hurts. We often have airsoft wars in there, and we do survival. We have a whole campsite picked out, and not to mention the variety of wildlife back there. There's cottontail rabbits, there's deer. I know for a fact there is a deer family back there, a buck, a doe, and a fawn, and I have seen a few owls in and around that area, as well as scissortail flycatchers. And so I would really go against this building because, for one, it, yes, invades my privacy because I do have I have quite a few airsoft guns, and I feel that maybe somebody would take that as a threat and possibly vandalize. I don't know. I'm assuming that these are good-natured people that are going to be moving in. And I also have a few knives, because everybody my age has knives now.
There's an officer out there in the hall.
They're not very big knives, though. And I think that, for one, yes, it is leased as not eligible for apartment buildings. I don't think that apartment buildings belong there because there's an apartment complex directly behind them, and I think that's just a little too many people in one area, because I know for a fact there are a lot of families who live in here, as well as children and wildlife, so I just really like to go against it, and thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Jack. It takes a lot of guts. A lot of adults are scared of that mic, so good job. Brian Freener.
Excuse me 1 minute while I pull this slide up. Hi, thank you, Planning Commission, for hearing us tonight and for some really great questions. So there's a long history to this issue that I'll try not to repeat, but we've been opposed to this rezoning for quite a long time. Before I begin, though, I would ask also if we would have an opportunity also, if new information is introduced, to rebut as well, if that's
Usually we just leave that to the applicant. The burden of proof is set with the applicant, so they're the ones that are asking for the relief, so we usually just leave that for them.
Okay, so no rebuttal? Okay. Okay, well, again, thank you for hearing us, and thanks for these tough questions. As folks said, you know, we didn't come with a hydrologist, we didn't come with an appraiser, we didn't come with our lawyer. We're just a bunch of regular people, your neighbors, people who go to church with you, patronize your businesses, teach your kids and your grandkids, property owners who want the same level of privacy and property rights respected in the same way that probably every resident in Stillwater wants. One of the reasons I have this map up is because we are technically zoned RTM, but we are a single-family community. 106 homes, a single-family community, and this is an error. There's not a single multifamily residence on this lot. It's an error by the city, and we feel like this error is being manipulated in order to justify this rezoning north of Mercury. This has been a common issue that's come up again and again and again, and as was stated earlier, the applicant is arguing that you should rezone this because it's consistent with adjoining property. So this is the applicant's language. It says the RTM matches the zoning to the north and south, and in fact it does. But if you come to our neighborhood, we're not an RTM neighborhood. We're all single-family homes, one-story single-family homes. And I think it's important because that error needs to be corrected, and the burden of correcting that has been placed on us in the past, and we feel presently. And so there is a background to this issue. You know, this rezoning has failed to get through 3 times in the past. The Planning Commission last year failed to recommend. It went to City Council twice, and they voted against it each time. So that should raise some suspicions. Why are we here tonight? You know, why is this issue coming up again, and what were the problems in the past? So we're here tonight not because we oppose economic growth or development. We're here tonight because we oppose the specific nature of this development that's being proposed. Student housing is inconsistent with and dramatically changes the nature of our community. We recognize that the developer has made some changes, but these changes are minimal. They're minimal, and I'll explain why. We have dutifully participated in a process of communication throughout this entire process. We met with Mr. Gose last year after last year's Planning Commission. We met with Mr. Gose at the required neighborhood meeting. We met with Mr. Levine and Mr. Kearns today. We formulated requests. We submitted our requests to the Planning Commission. We submitted our requests to the developer, and they're all part of this file. The existing site plans reflect changes that are mostly superficial, and I'm going to go into a number of reasons why I believe they're superficial. So what we just want to address is that we feel like there are significant costs to this development that aren't being taken into account, and primarily those costs are being displaced on us, and we're being asked to bear the burden of those costs. I'm going to go through these slides very quickly. But if you have any questions, please stop me at any time. I'm happy to stop and explain anything. You know, I looked at that traffic report as well, and it's I tried to cipher all that data, And it just, I'd love to hear what the traffic engineer has to say about this, but, I just pulled data from the police department. I'm no traffic engineer, and I looked at the 3 major exits that I see from this area, and we all know Airport and Perkins is a death trap. Perkins and Mercury Avenue, there have been 38 injuries. Okay, this is just up until January of last year. Okay, it's just up until January. I haven't even pulled the data since Aspen Heights has gone into place. Perkins and Lakeview, 182 injuries up to, Perkins and, Lakeview. Sorry, let me get that back. Perkins and Lakeview, 182 injuries. I got the data.
What time period, Brian?
This is going up to January. I pulled all the data going up to January of 2013. Of 2013. I think it was for the last 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. So, if we can tolerate 3 deaths at that intersection every 8 years and 257 injuries, then I just want to put that data out there. I'm just a little surprised the traffic engineer didn't put that in there. 4 deaths and 12 injuries at Marine, and I read the section of that report where it says it's not justified to put a traffic light in there. For God's sakes, 4 people have died there. And the reason is because of that hill that was mentioned earlier. There's not even a crosswalk at this intersection. It just baffles me that there's 2 schools right on the other side of this neighborhood. It just baffles me that we can't have a discussion about having somebody put in a traffic light or a crosswalk on the ground so that people stop dying, because it is a dangerous intersection. And I'll show you the hill in a minute. So just those 3 intersections, and this is not counting. This is counting Perkins and Lakeview. 389 injuries, 7 deaths. So the reason, this is one of the crosses that's still on the corner there, that I think really helps to kind of encapsulate the fact that there are people who are bearing very real costs. I don't care how many cars you count passing through there. There are real problems that need to be addressed, and it's just it's a little shocking that nobody is addressing them, and that the PUD application doesn't address them. So there's the hill that was mentioned earlier. It's 60 foot to the top of that hill, and the reason it's so dangerous is you can see from the slide here that the car, as it goes down the road, starts to disappear when it drives down the road. And so likewise, the cars coming at you when you're emerging from Marine come at you very quickly, and if people are breaking the speed limit, that's when people start to die. So it's complicated by the fact that all this construction traffic that's going to be moving in and out of there is going to further diminish the view. So, it's pretty obvious that there are problems there. I'm going to skip pretty quickly through the water infrastructure. I'm not a hydrologist. I don't pretend to be. The only point that I want to make is that there are significant retention ponds or detention ponds throughout the neighborhood. They're at those X's that are marked there. The proposed one for the avenue is right above that section of Lakeview Ridge. And the elevation that was introduced Monday makes clear that not only is the development raised above, but so is the retention pond. And the question was asked in the pre-application meeting, well, what way is all that water going to flow? That water flows through our neighborhood now. Those 2 red lines show that those are 2 drainage canals. They're ditches that run right through our neighborhood. So these are the retention ponds in Aspen Heights. You obviously know what a retention pond is, so I'll go through it quickly. But the elevation as you head westward at 799 Mercury causes issues that the hydrologist needs to address. I wouldn't want this retention pond elevated above my house. Okay, they say that a dam, controlled dam, is going to support that water, but we're just asking for some kind of articulation of what the actual real dangers are. So these are the drainage canals. I'm not making it up. These are the red lines on the map I just showed you. They're very large, obviously, so they're meant to carry a large load of water. This lady's backyard is 24 feet deep. The retention pond is directly going to be behind her. Water currently flows at 2 feet deep in heavy rains through her backyard. And that's true not just next to her backyard, but also on the second drainage canal that goes through our neighborhood. That one flows into the retention pond there that's in Lakeview Ridge, okay? So again, we just want we hope we can only trust that the city actually addresses that. But the biggest issue is really the loss of privacy. So these profiles are tricky. And I really appreciate the really good questions about trees, how thick they are, and when they're going to actually come to mature status. Because I still think that's all being fudged quite a bit. It's all being fudged. It's really hazy, at least in my mind. But these are the two setbacks, 50 and 125 foot back. You can see that you can peer into the backyards easily, right, without trees there. So let's forget about the no trees. Let's put those cartoon cutout trees up there. One of the problems is that it is kind of a cartoon because we don't know what those trees are actually going to look like. The other thing about one of the other images I noticed does have balconies on these three-story buildings. But we met with Mr. Kearns and Mr. Levine today, and we asked about these balconies. They're 10-foot decks. They're 10-foot decks, and there are a lot of them. And these are not accounted for. The question was asked, what's the sight? What's the line of sight from the balcony? And that wasn't calculated. So we actually asked for the balconies to be removed, but they appeared to be unwilling to do that. But these are large party balconies, okay? They're about, I was given the dimensions of about 10 foot by 10 foot. These are not accounted for. It's not clear to me that the trees necessarily block the view from these decks. People are going to be out on these decks at all hours of the night, and I think it's a significant part of the problem that has not been addressed. So again, this is the applicant's language. The proposed project is more compatible. These are some of the reasons we don't believe it's compatible with the existing neighborhood. In fact, if you look at their language, what they're arguing is that it's compatible also with Aspen Heights. That argument alone is enough to vote against this. If in fact this is compatible with Aspen Heights, I went and pulled the police data for Aspen Heights. In the last 7.5 months, August 1st up until now, there's 100, these are the reports right here, okay? I can give these all to you. It's 183 police incidents that have occurred in Aspen Heights in 7 months. And we're not talking about, people, minor offenses here. Burglary, domestic physical violence, domestic verbal, drugs, DUI, 37 loud parties. That might not be a big number to some folks, but this is the point people have been making over and over again, is that they don't want to live next to this mess. And the argument was given to us today, well, we're different because we're going to manage it all differently. We're having on-site security. Well, it wasn't exactly explained to us that way today. There were going to be these 10 resident assistants, okay? So, I mean, are we having college kids look after other college kids? Is that who these resident assistants are? It's not clear to me who exactly is going to be in charge here. 6 full-time staff members, but are they going to be there 24/7? That's why we asked for 24/7 security and management on site, okay? So these are significant problems. And if this development replicates what Aspen Heights has already done, from this track record, this is going to be an absolute miserable place to live for us. The developer will provide on-site management, and again, what they're hanging their hat on is that everybody's just going to obey the rules, right? Except for those 183 police incidents. And so this is what we're trying to avoid, okay? We talked about, it was stated earlier that all this real estate value is going to be retained, but look at what a mess this is. These are these new developments behind Walmart. These trees do not provide coverage, okay? I don't care how you want to cut it. Those are 3-story buildings. By the way, how far do you think they are away from the back of the fence? 60 feet. So they're 10 feet further away than the 2-story buildings that they've proposed to put next to our property. I know because I got out there with a tape measure and I measured them. There is no screening whatsoever. The trees are kind of a joke. They don't provide any blockage whatsoever. And I'll show you other vantage points here. This towers over this neighborhood, and my buddy who lives in the neighborhood said real estate signs went up and down the block the minute this went in. So, it doesn't take a genius or a real estate expert to know people don't want to live next to this, okay? Here's how well the trees actually block the line of sight. They don't block the line of sight. 60 feet away from the fence, 10 feet further than what's been proposed. It's a behemoth. It's at an elevated landscape, as will exist at the western end of Mercury. and we don't think it's suitable, and we think it's an argument against recommending this PUD. So, what are the costs? What are the costs to the residents? What are the costs to the city? How much did taxpayers have to spend to send the cops out 183 times in 7.5 months? We just don't feel that once this building is built, the cat's out of the bag. We got to trust that it's all going to be managed appropriately. And, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, it's just not something that we feel is justified. We just want to make it clear, we do support development, and what we don't support, though, is having this begin. You can see already how it's beginning to transform our neighborhood. This is Lakeview Ridge. This is the view taken from atop Benjamin, looking out onto our neighborhood. Just imagine more buildings, 2- and 3-story. This is just a snapshot. Imagine 2- and 3-story buildings 50 and 100 foot apart. They're going to dwarf the houses that are behind them. Okay? They're already starting to appear. So what we're asking you to do is to enforce the PUD guidelines. Okay? These PUD guidelines are open to vast interpretation. Okay? We want to call attention to the fact that the red language, these are all direct quotes from the PUD guidelines. It is a regulatory process. Whether we like that word or not, it is incumbent upon the city to regulate this development and create meaningful open space. Meaningful open space, smooth transition. I won't read from these. Whenever any proposal or portion thereof is in conflict, the PUD must be denied or tabled. Okay, whenever any portion of it, whether it's bike lanes or what have you. So our language is in blue. I sent you all this stuff. These are all the requests that we made, so you know this data. But this is I want you to know where we got these requests from. Our language is in blue. That's the language in red that justifies it in the PUD guidelines. Common open space, and I've not heard this addressed. Common open space, Ms. Dennison said there was a lot of confusion on this. Common open space provided as a buffer at least 100 feet wide between existing development and the PUD, not different zoning practices. The existing development. We are the existing development. So this is the city's language. We're just asking you to apply it. It says nothing about differential zoning practices here. That's clear, and there's the article. The density transition area shall be established for a depth of 100 feet. That is the point that was raised earlier, is that the density transition is being addressed, but not common open space as a buffer between the PUD and existing development. So I think on that grounds alone that this disqualifies this PUD. Again, access and traffic circulation. It says very clearly in the PUD that property outside the PUD should be accounted for. Publicly dedicated streets within or adjacent to. Curbs, they've addressed curbs. Bicycle paths connecting to existing Stillwater bicycle paths. This is something that would significantly decrease automobile traffic. There's no indication that they're going to build bike paths that connect with existing bike paths. Traffic access, existing infrastructure. What is the impact on existing infrastructure? I think we've given you some evidence that there's at least a little bit of an impact, more than that's being acknowledged here. Mitigation factors include, but are not limited to, off-site improvements, okay? The preliminary plan shall be submitted. We've done this, preliminary drainage study. And then screening. It's all about how you choose to interpret it. We're not comfortable with the screening that's been put forth so far. I think there were some great questions about the nature of these trees and how thick they're going to be. This fence and these dirt berms are being put forth as some kind of compromise, but they're 30-inch tall berms with a 4-foot fence. That's just over 6 feet. We've already got that. We've already got the 6-foot fence along our back property line. So that's not much of a compromise. It's a red herring thrown out there to demonstrate that somebody's compromising. Dimensions and materials of fences. What are these fences going to be made of? They're going to be wood. Again, management. Our language in blue, special considerations which require a PUD rather than a conventional district. Why this district would be in the public interest. It's incumbent upon them to articulate that. And what you're hearing from all these people tonight is that it's not in the public interest. It's not, you know, I'm sure it's going to generate some money for somebody, but not for us. It's coming out of our pockets. So anyway, that's the specific language that we think really requires you to recommend against this. You know, at the end of the day, we can get all these experts out here, we can throw all this data at you to try to confuse all these issues, but it's a very simple question. It's a very simple moral decision. Is it morally justified to rezone adjacent property and change the law if doing so damages the property rights of next-door neighbors? That's all this is about. And if you believe that if you would want this in your backyard and you believe it's morally justified to change the law to make this happen, then I guess all you can do is recommend for it, but we're asking that you recommend against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Jacelyn Arnold.
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline Arnold. I live at 902 Lauren Lane. My property is adjacent to this development, you know, we've had lots of eloquent explanations to you, so I'm just going to be very brief and explain to you why I purchased in this neighborhood. I've only lived in Stillwater for 13 months. I've lived in 5 states. My husband was transferred quite a bit, my late husband, and that's why we moved to different states. And in those processes, you know, I've looked at lots of different types of homes. When I moved to Stillwater for a job at the Oklahoma Department of Career Tech as program specialist, I looked in all areas of Stillwater. I looked at a lot of ranges in prices, and I chose my location based upon what was available. My home is very well built. It's the size that I wanted. It had the best floor plan, the best size yard that was available, including homes that were $20,000 and $30,000 more than what I paid. I like the neighborhood. It's very quiet. I, in fact, looked at a home from one of those slides that he just showed you that had the apartments in the back. I chose not to purchase there. I looked at a number of homes on the west side, and like I said, many homes in different areas. I chose this location for its privacy. There's no noise, basically, or there wasn't before the development was completed at Aspen Heights. I felt that it was a good value for me as a widow for a retirement home. I'm not retired now, but I'm looking to the future. Behind my home, as well as to the west of my home, there is a small forest there of trees. Most of them are deciduous trees, but there are a lot of trees already there, and I would like those trees to remain and not have those torn out since they're already there. They help with erosion. They help, taking care of the water issue that there is in that area. I'm only the second owner of my home, and so as I said, for the quality, many of the homes that I looked at in other areas required extensive remodeling, and I wasn't interested in that. I wanted a newer home. Very little available in Stillwater in that area, that price range. So looking for affordable housing in the area that's not, as I said, I wanted to downsize. One of the concerns that I have with the berms, I'm not sure exactly how much linear footage that a berm is going to take. I have landscaped every home that we've lived in. My husband majored in forestry, and I do know that it takes quite a bit of linear footage to create a berm that will be sustainable. And when you go ahead and plant the trees, even if they are, let's say, 15 feet tall, if they die the next year, then they come back and plant only a 15-foot tall tree, it's going to take a number of years. In a former residence that I lived at for 23 years, we planted a number of evergreen trees in the back, and it took approximately 20 years for those to become 20 feet tall. And that was with extensive care in Oklahoma. I'm originally from Michigan. It requires a lot of water and care to make sure that those trees do not die. There's been a large increase since I've moved to this town in the number of apartments that are already accessible for student housing. There's currently building going on at OSU as well. I would hope that Stillwater would not become just an apartment city. I would hope that you would also entertain ideas of possible senior housing as a possibility for that type of neighborhood instead of an apartment complex for students. If the development is resold down in the number of years, my question would be, does the PUD still have to be maintained when the ownership changes? So I didn't know that. Okay. So, but anyway, I'm just here to request that you vote against this. Thank you very much for listening to me.
All right. Thanks, Jacqueline. Sorry I pronounced your name wrong. I was doing really good up until that point.
It's very common.
I'll try one more time. Micah Lucas.
I'm really nervous, so just bear with me. But I'm Micah Lucas, and I live at 802 East Lauren Lane. I love Stillwater, and I've loved it ever since I came here in 2006 as a college student. This is where I met my husband. It's where we got to buy our first home. It's where we both accepted positions that we love at Stillwater Public Schools. It's where we have been able to dream about our future. And we have so many dreams and goals for our lives in Stillwater, and one is starting a family. We bought our home as a place to start those dreams. Tonight I just ask that you take the place of where I'm at for a little bit. Think of yourselves as a newlywed who's so excited to get married and to buy a house and to start a life together. And then think of yourself as a lady, or a man in your case, so excited to have children playing in your backyard. And then I want you to imagine that the house that you picked and that you were so excited about and that you have chosen as the starting point for your dreams and your goals is being overshadowed by a massive apartment complex that will tower over your property and will all but eliminate a sense of privacy and security. Now I want you to put yourself in our shoes. How would you feel? Would you feel excited? Would you be able to sleep at night knowing that your children are safe in their own home? Would you be able to even dream about the could-bes or the what-ifs or the oh-yes or anything? Because if you truly put yourself in our shoes, the answer to all those questions would be no. And although this is simply a business deal to some, to us it's our lives. Our homes are a large part of what makes Stillwater home for us and the place that we love. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. That's all we have on the list for the opposition. Does anyone have any questions?
May I speak, please?
No, I'm sorry. We had to be on the list.
She told me out there I didn't have to. It's okay.
I didn't tell you anything, ma'am.
Yeah, we have to have them on the list. Anyone like to questions or anything? Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Were all of the people that they brought up officially on the list?
They were. Yes, ma'am. They actually had more than were on the list. Yeah. Okay, we will close that portion of the public hearing. At this time, we will allow the applicant, if they wish to speak, say anything. Okay.
This is a difficult issue. We've obviously heard some very heartfelt and emotional responses from the neighborhood. And I believe that by and large, these are genuine. I believe they believe them. We talk about our community. Our community is, I guess, different to the person who's defining it. Most of us, many of us, came here to teach. I came here to teach at OSU. Had there been no university, had there been no students, I would not be here. Many of you would not be in our community. Many of the people in this neighborhood earn their living in some form of education. This is a proposal that will attract students. We work diligently to attract them to our community. They make our lives better. They enrich us. And yes, they do live among us. I think one of the things that we're facing is a legitimate fear of the unknown. Aspen Heights is there. My client can't do anything to change that. That's not our client's responsibility, nor is it necessarily your responsibility, with all due respect. There is a legitimate concern about the loss of privacy, and we've heard it, I think, from the people who live in this strip of houses against this property line. I think that's a bona fide concern. How has our client responded to it? Well, first, they put in a transition zone. I believe it's clearly in compliance with the city code and the language set out. Secondly, they capped the buildings at 28 feet height in the first level of the transition zone. They put in setback lines. They turned the three-story building sideways, if you will, so that nobody would be peering down into it. I would suggest to our presenters tonight that if you want to see who is closest to you and can see in your house, you don't need to look at an apartment complex. Look at your next door neighbor. They're closer to you. We heard a lot of talk, but relatively, I don't think anybody mentioned their neighborhood is already 40 to 50% rental. Now, they may not like that fact, but if you drive through their neighborhood, you will see that fact. You will see cars in the street. Not necessarily a bad thing. If you want to know where your neighborhood is going to go up or down in value, don't look to those that are necessarily just adjacent to you. That is a factor. We had a presentation that there's no real establishment of that fact in our town historically. But if you really want to know what's going to affect your neighborhood value, look on either side of your house. If you live in a rental area and there are cars parked in the street and there are large trucks, multiple trucks parked in your neighbor's yard, that's going to increase your value, your decrease in value. Now, I am not suggesting, and I do not believe, that this is going to decrease their value. In fact, I think these people are going to benefit significantly by the development of this neighborhood and the infill that is going to take place and the development that is taking place on Perkins Road. I think if we look 5 years from now, this is going to look different and it's going to be positive on property value, my opinion. So, are the compromises that some diminish significant? Well, I suppose, again, that is in the eye of the beholder. The balconies all faced east and west. There's no balcony staring at these people. The duplexes are obviously designed to limit intrusion and to provide more privacy. Fence height, berms, trees, transition zone, blocking car lights. These are all legitimate efforts, and I think are significant. Security. Obviously, this developer wants to have a safe and secure neighborhood. That is in this developer's interest. In conclusion, this property is currently zoned industrial general. These people are benefited by the fact that right now it's a vacant lot. It does not have to be a vacant lot. That is a fact that none of us can escape. We all live in a community. As part of a community, we do bump into each other. We do live and hear noise, and we hear things from our neighbors. That is just part of living in a community as opposed to northern Montana out on the wide open spaces. This is a natural infill. Aspen Heights is there, then this area, and then the neighborhood. This is a natural infill. This is what the comprehensive plan recommends or suggests and informs us of a thoughtful use of this land. We cannot obviously satisfy everybody in that neighborhood. That is apparent from tonight. I would submit to you that no organized society can let one or two individuals prone to hyperbole and exaggeration and overstatement and misstatement lead a community. That leads you into a tyranny of a loud one or two people. And I believe we have heard some of that tonight. As we look at 23306 standards, this PUD complies. It does not require compliance with fanatical and exaggerated misstatement. I urge you to vote for this project and appreciate your attention tonight.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask some rebuttal type question?
You sure can.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Why don't you start with your question?
You know, I have a question. I am new to the commission. I'm very nervous also. But, you know, my question is, you know, we are here for the community of Stillwater, the residents. And my question is where is there, or does it say that there is a need for more student housing?
I'm going to be very direct with you.
Please.
That's really not your job to dictate the use of private property ownership.
Okay.
I think your job is, I want to be blunt. I want to respond
We
to
can,
her.
but
That's
everyone,
fair.
we're going to keep it cordial, and we're going to keep
You
it
bet. And I don't want, I'm certainly not
That's
attacking
fair.
you.
I understand.
I know you, and I would never attack you.
I know.
The point is, the charge is to review the PUD, to make reasonable input, and to assure that my client has complied with what you believe in your judgment is a proper application. This is not Section 8 housing. This is not some sort of hospital need assessment. This is not a licensed care facility of any sort. So there is no requirement that my client establish an economic need in our community. Obviously, my client will risk a very substantial amount of money, and if they are wrong, they will pay the economic price. That is my response to your question. It may not be a satisfactory response. Mr. Dorman may provide you with other input, but that's my response. Sure. You bet. Sure about it.
No, as far as market conditions are concerned, we do extensive market studies to look at our competitive set and see what their occupancy rates are, looking at the enrollment growth of the university, you know, over the last 10 years, where the projections are headed, seeing what's going to be built on campus, if anything. So we look at all these factors and make a determination, you know, is this a market we want to be in? Because myself and the other principals in the company do have significant financial risk and wouldn't want to be in the market otherwise.
Absolutely.
You know, so our, you know, competitive set, Aspen Heights, the Grove, are 98 to 100% leased, as is 51, and the reserve as well. I think they're 97, 98%. So our competitive set is certainly very well occupied. And we still think that there is room in this part of the market to further serve students who are looking for this type of highly amenitized development with a variety of living options between a studio and a 5-bedroom. So that's why we're here.
It's a very impressive property. I mean, you've went above and beyond a lot of the properties here in Stillwater. So, thank you.
Questions in two different areas. Number one is the residents of the area talked about 24/7 security. You talked about 6 people living on there, and there was a comment about students watching students. Can you give me some insight?
Yeah, sure. Typically, management is very important to us because it has a significant impact on the success of a property. Is probably the most important thing. Where we do have, I said, 6 full-time employees and 10 what are referred to as community assistants that are trained by us that also serve the role as leasing agents, but are there on call 24/7 to, in the event that they're needed, they are the person that's responsible to, when security isn't patrolling, saying a Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, right? Or contacts if there isn't a police officer residing on site, they call a security firm that we have under contract that provides the services.
In terms of the PUD requirements, do the PUD requirements, as you've presented to us, require security on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings? Or is that a statement of your current policy?
That's how we operate, so that's something that we could add to the PUD if you like. It's what we do and are going to do.
Do you have any concern with that? My concern is if this is sold, that we still have that requirement in there. Mr. Dorman, is that?
If it's a requirement you want to place in the PUD, you can do that.
Okay.
Realizing though that, that is something that's more usually reserved for institutional type settings as opposed to apartments, but if that is something you want to add, then, if that's what they're willing to do it, that's
And again, those are the 2 techniques that we use, either the security firm patrolling or on-site resident law enforcement, off-duty officers that live on site. Seems to be a pretty popular thing that we've done.
Anything else, Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Yep. You're popular.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer a few questions?
Well, I could, sure. I had one question. One of the residents or speakers that spoke in opposition mentioned some 10-foot decks that are on the 3rd floor. Is there such a? I can't see those on the plans.
I think
they're on the elevations. They're on the 2nd floor. So
Okay. So not on the 3rd floor.
no.
Okay. Okay.
So they're the buildings. The next building's north of the duplexes. So the
Okay.
duplexes are 2 stories. They do not have balconies.
Okay.
It's 3 stories.
Is there on the stairwells, is there kind of an platform balcony type of a arrangement out there, or is it just a straight cut down? Didn't I see in the...
On the front stairwell?
Isn't there kind of an open, larger than... I lived at Monticello Apartments. You've never been there, I'm sure, but you go up, there's a platform, you go up. Is that the way it is in your deal, or is there more of an open area where the ladies are sunning, the guys are out there? How does that?
Where are you talking about, on the deck itself?
The
or
stairway.
The front
the
stairway?
stairways.
No, the front stairway is just a, whatever the code is, a 4-foot wide stair that comes up and just brings you up to the front door.
Straight up. I don't remember where I saw that. We've looked at a lot of data.
Right.
Unbelievable. That's all I got.
I get a different interpretation of this drawing than what you just said. So the stairs do go up.
They
I
have
have a small platform and then continue.
Well, but there's not
But there's not a big area right there. But they go up right here, they have a small platform right there, and then they go up in the middle.
This is the stair tower here. This is the front.
Isn't this stairs?
Yeah, this is the back deck.
It's the back deck to get to the back deck.
Yeah,
And
and
get
there's
off
a
the
stair
back
to get
deck.
back down to the ground.
Okay.
So right here, this isn't a gathering room.
No.
Okay.
That's it's
I had
switchback.
a resident
Mr. Levine,
voice that
could you,
concern with me.
could you explain that on the drawing so everyone in the audience could see if Ms. Dennison could pull that up?
Okay. Yeah, I believe he was talking about this area here was the question. This is the front stairwell, and the question was, is this a gathering area? And the way the stairwell works is it comes up, and then there's a switchback just to get the elevation up to the front door, and then there's just enough space for the two doors that are at the top here.
And the lower part of that, that
This
is
area here?
the balcony area, and those
Yeah.
are stairs coming off the balcony.
Yeah,
That's the
this is-
rear elevation.
This is the rear elevation. So this is, a deck here, and a deck here, and it shares the staircase to come down, to get back down to grade.
Are the second story dwellings 2 stories events? I assume there's no stairway to the 3rd floor, or am I?
Inside the building.
Okay.
Not outside, but inside. Can you go to the view from the top, the landscaping plan? Right, that,
Am I going the right direction?
right there.
Right here?
You were there. Based upon comments from the residents, they were talking about people in, whether it's the transition area or the 3-story area. You showed us the line of sight, but in the parking area,
Here?
right there, you will not have any evergreens. So my interpretation of that is those front windows, people could be in those front windows, and since it's only 6 foot tall, they could easily see into people's backyards.
Out the front?
Out to the front. There are windows on the front, right?
Right, there's no windows on the end.
There's no windows on the end, so I'm not worried about the end. I'm worried about the front and the angle there. So they could look at a 45-degree angle outside their window, which is not an uncommon angle to look across the parking lot into somebody's backyard.
As far as the landscaping height on that stuff, it's, and what's planted in there?
I'm talking about looking over that, and I can't pronounce that word of that plant.
What is that word?
That 4-foot-high fence.
As far as just swapping those out with evergreens, I mean, put evergreens in there instead if that's.
Okay.
Are you speaking at the end of the parking lot?
At the end of the parking lot.
So where they've got number 5 on their large shrubs.
Here's
what they're replacing that.
I might as well. Can I say the direction that I'm leaning toward, Mr. Norman, or is that?
Your call.
I still want that fence and that berm there. I want the 30-inch berm. I want the fence, but I want the fence to be 6 foot tall, and I want those bushes to soften that fence. But I want on either the outside or the inside, the area closest to the neighborhood, I'd like to have those evergreens go across that area. So I'd like to add evergreens that go from on the south side, from
Across here?
across the entire south side except where the detention facility is located. because I am concerned about the screening in that area if I'm up 20 foot up in the air looking across that parking lot. So that's the direction I'm headed.
So on their Exhibit B, their landscape plan, where number 5 is large shrubs, you're talking about swapping those out for evergreen.
No, I want the large shrubs
In
there
addition
to evergreens. So what I would want,
Can you fit that in there?
Yeah.
what I would want is to set back the parking lot 40 foot so you could put in evergreens in the berm and the shrubs.
40
With
foot
that-
from where it is now, or 40 foot from the property?
Right now, it's set 25 foot back. We've had testimony that it's currently 30 foot. I'd like to have it 40 foot away from the fence. And to me, that is a large enough area to put in the evergreens and put in the berm and put in a 6 foot high fence along with the shrubs in front of that.
So to do
How many
that,
parking spots?
Where was that parking end run at? Roger?
Just taking one out.
The
it
distance.
would lose 6 parking spaces,
Shrubs in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
unless you did it down here too? Well,
Dude, that's
you're not down on this
commercial.
end?
You don't
I'm
care
not concerned
west
about
of
the commercial.
detention
I'm
pond.
concerned with, and I'll use the language the residents use, and that's in the single-family development. I realize that it is zoned multifamily, but when I drove through there, everything's single-family. So I would want the shrubs to be there, and I want the evergreens all the way across there.
So that would be roughly 8 parking spaces, because there's 2 on this west end that overlap Lakeview Ridge 4, and then there would be another 6 if you took one.
Yes, and they're significantly above the parking requirement.
Yeah, we can certainly.
He's thinking evergreens are cheaper than concrete.
No, we're
That did not enter no factor in my mind.
now, we've talked about reducing some parking because we are overparked and we do plan on doing that. The question I have, as far as, are we better off staggering evergreens for screening?
Can you get the landscape person, because up here,
Yeah, can you?
arborist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Don't
I'm
talk
sorry.
shrubs, just trees.
I want to defer to somebody who knows much better than I do.
I didn't mean to insult you, I don't.
I mean, as from a privacy standpoint, if they were staggered, it would provide more density and be better screening, and we could certainly add more of them to be able to accomplish that if that's.
I'd like to have them staggered so they provide a screening from day one. And I've done a lot of road work in the past, and that's the only way to get that screening day one is to stagger them and then make them, cross one another. And so for day one, you've got that site restriction up 15 foot. And then as they grow, you get more as the years go by.
Correct.
But by packing those in with the photinias and the evergreen there together, does the shading of that evergreen cause a problem to the photinia?
Well, my understanding is that the photinia would be on the south side of the fence and the evergreens would be on the north side of the fence, so that they.
Are you?
And if you were to pack.
I don't have a problem with evergreens being on either side.
Okay.
If they were packed together, I mean, obviously the closer the yard together, it's going to create competition amongst them. So you're going to have some that won't get to be as full-sized width-wise, but as long as they are in contact with each other, then you're accomplishing the same thing with respect to their screening value, and they will continue to grow up.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question for my fellow commissioner and you guys. I think you've done this for a living, but when you move the line of the fence, the berm away from the thing, aren't you opening up the view in a way? If you've got a tree and it's right here, I can't see nothing.
Right.
If there's a tree way down there, it's more.
Well, sir.
In other words, and I'm not sure as a resident, and I love this process. I did not want to see a pure rezoning because I felt like Stillwater needed this process to get it as good as it can be gotten or not do it at all. And so, but it looks to me like I wouldn't want to live where there were 40-foot trees, 80-foot trees right on the other side of my property line, creating a wall. You know, I might want to see a little sky too. And so I noticed in the angle that you were talking about, Michael, where looking out at the 45-degree ohm of that ohm down there, it looked like maybe one evergreen in that front corner of that deal would suffice. But maybe can the motion be more worded at line of sight conceptually or whatever? And this is something computable. It's doable to get that. I mean, I know it's hard to measure the fill rate of the trees and all of that, but is there an issue, Michael? Am I missing something that if you move the deal away, you're going to need bigger trees?
I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think that you can eliminate. If you say line of sight, I think in all those apartments, unless you have the trees densely across the entire south side, there'll be a window that you can see through. And I would rather see the trees planted and be perfectly clear. In my opinion, we want evergreens all on the south side except where the stormwater detention is located.
Well, isn't it true too that the berm and the fence was more for the car lights in the parking lot?
Yeah.
You know, to mitigate that light, more than the screening issue.
Right.
So.
But he's brought screening into the berm.
No, I understand.
With the angle deal we discussed.
But he's also scooted the parking lot back to allow for room for the
Any more questions?
I have no more questions for these. I have a question for Paula Dennison, but
Okay, thank you, guys. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything before we bring Paul up? We'll bring Paul up to answer Mr. Buchert's questions and then we'll close the public hearing portion and ask Ms. Denson.
Yes, sir.
this transition area, what I understood you to say is that what the city ordinance says, the transition is associated with density.
Correct.
Not, we've got one-story homes, and now we're going to have 2 stories within the transition area.
Yes.
So that 2-story within the transition area still meets our city ordinances and codes.
Yes, sir, it
for
does.
transition.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions for Paula? Okay, Paula, we asked for your alternatives.
And again, so you can have them all in front of you, and it may be a little hard to read when they pop up on the screen, but we have placed all the alternatives before you on one slide. They're also in your reports. You can recommend approval as presented. You can recommend approval with any modifications. You can find the additional information or discussion is needed and either table to a date certain or continue to a date certain for that information, or find that the PUD is not appropriate for the property based on the impacts and recommend that it not be approved. I would like to, before you get into discussion around the horseshoe, just for information's sake, outline the process that is remaining for anyone in the audience or that is listening or watching through television. On April 7th at 5:30 p.m. in this room in the council chambers is the City Council public hearing, where again the applicant and any other interested persons will have an opportunity to speak. That format is a little different. There is the requirement that if you wish to speak, you must sign up to speak on a table sitting outside the chamber prior to the calling to order of the meeting. And also the speakers are limited to the amount of time that they have to speak at the city council meetings.
Also, any presentations, video, pictures, anything like that, wish to be displayed through the city system, that has to be provided to the city of Stillwater. I believe it's 3 days in advance of the public hearing, so that would be Thursday prior to the hearing on Monday, April 7th, so that can be checked and added into the city system. After the public hearing, at that time, the city council will hear a similar presentation. Of course, it'll be the Planning Commission's recommendation with one forthcoming. That will be presented to the city council. They will also take the public input and have an opportunity to take any action at the close of the public hearing. That is not the end of the process. It's the end of the public hearing when that council meeting is over. There are additional statutory requirements that the city council has in order to change law, which is what this PUD with the underlying zoning change in effect does for this individual piece of property. That process for the law change is to have what we call ordinances read at the council, and they are read twice, and then they're published in newspaper for them to become effective. So even after the public hearing at City Council, there's still a couple of meetings where it'll be on the agenda, and then the publication in the newspaper, whatever happens. So just wanted to let everyone know of the process that is still remaining after tonight's meeting. Okay? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Paula. Any comments or discussion?
Well, I think both sides of this probably should be commended. And the way the neighborhood came out, organized, with whatever vote this commission or recommendation this commission pushes forward or what the council does. You guys have done a great job with that. I personally appreciated the information I received from the Homeowners Association. And conversely, I think the developer has made a valiant effort at trying to hear the concerns and adjust his project accordingly. So that being said, I think both sides should be commended for trying to work through the process. With that, personally, I agree with Mr. Buchert on the screening. I think, that was something I kind of heard from everybody was, we don't want people looking down on us, and I can totally appreciate that. And I really think it is possible with correct screening to get that taken care of and give you guys a sense of privacy. My other concern is the zoning that currently is on that property. And I can appreciate buying a house on the edge of town, which you guys did when that was developed. But with industrial general zoning behind you, there's a lot of things that would be very obtrusive to your way of life that could come in there, used by right, you wouldn't even know it happened. They could move right in and do what the process allows them to do. At least in this scenario, you're going to know what you're going to get, and you've had at least a voice in it to try to help make it better. So with that, and I do agree, we need a little more tweaking, which I think Mr. Buchert, he's been over here writing probably what I think is a motion, but anyway, I'm going to support it if I think what Mike's going to say is what I think he's going to say with the screening issues. The only thing I would like to see, if you haven't added it, Mike, is the pedestrian easement on the west side of the property, or some stated plan that whenever that corner develops, let's make use of that and try to mitigate the amount of people potentially out on the streets or the roads.
I guess I would add to what Dusty said. I also think it's very commendable that the preparation and time that both sides of this have put in, and as well as us as commissioners have put in reviewing it, and city staff. I too am very concerned about the existing zoning as it sits right now. Somebody could come in and there is no height limit requirement on the building that could go next to you. They could build, the code says there's no maximum height in industrial general. And not only that, they could build an administration building full of windows looking down into your backyard, and you would have nothing to say about it. And they could do the minimum amount of landscaping. Whereas, you know, if I'm looking right here, it says this landscape area is required is 123,000 square feet, and they're proposing a little around 4 times that amount. So I feel like that there's been a huge effort by the neighbors to have their voice heard, and the huge effort by the developer to listen and make accommodations. And I do agree with Mr. Ellis that no matter what happens, not everybody's going to be happy at the end of the day. Not everybody's wishes or wants for that property behind their house is going to be met. I know, you know, where I personally live, something could come in across the street from me tomorrow, and I knew that when I bought my house. Something could go behind me if they so choose to try to develop in the floodplain. I am very concerned about the existing zoning and what could be put there if they sold the property to somebody else. And at least with this, you know, there is that fear of unknown that it sounds like there's been that fear of unknown. But with this, I think that what they're presenting should reduce some of that fear. I also am interested to hear what Mr. Buchert's put together. I would add that the one thing I think, and it was mentioned earlier, I think it would be good for the traffic study to be accepted by the city before this moves forward. And I think, you know, based on what they presented, I don't know, I guess the city is still reviewing that, the traffic study, as far as they haven't presented comments back to the traffic engineer. But that's what I have to say.
There's a lot of people that have said, put yourself in my shoes, and I want y'all to put yourselves in our shoes too. We don't get paid anything, and that's fine. Somebody's got to step up and do this. And I got to thinking, what would I do if this were coming in behind my house? I would not want that to happen. But I got to thinking, as a businessman, I just bought a property downtown, and I live right beside Boomer Lake. And if somebody called me and said, Joe, you can't mow OSU in your lawn anymore. I own this property. I'm not hurting anybody here. So, but this is a real difficult process. It's a difficult thing. This has been a harder one for me. I don't own rental property in this town, so I'm not trying to keep this from coming in so I have a better supply-demand angle. I'm not a contractor like some of these guys, so I don't really have a horse in this race. And when I got on this deal, I told them of some of my limitations and history about this, and they said, that's great. We want somebody that is, you know, just going to listen to the issues and make a common sense approach to it. But it's a difficult thing. You know, I got to thinking, what would be my options if I were in your shoes residents? And it's a difficult thing. You know, obviously you can't buy the land or whatever, but part of this is why I got on the Stillwater Planning Commission, is to learn about these situations and to kind of get involved in the community. And I'll encourage all of you guys to do that too. It's been very rewarding. Been a tremendous learning deal. This has been the most difficult and studious project in my tenure of a year and a half now, or I don't even know. It's been a long time. Seems like 12 years. But it is a difficult thing, guys, and I get it. I see the situation, but as a businessman and as a property owner, it's a real tricky thing to, you know, who has the rights here and whose rights are we looking out for. And it's a balanced thing, and that's why this should be done through as a PUD versus a rezoning, winner take all, everybody runs type deal. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Can I speak?
You bet.
You know, as a Stillwater resident, I've lived here for, God, probably 18 years, and I don't know about building and all that stuff, but I do know about families. I work with families every day, and I do take this personal. The reason I'm here is because this is personal to me. I do care about the families of Stillwater, and I do want to stay here, and I want to continue being a resident. This is a tough thing, and, you know, I don't know a whole lot about zoning. I'm still learning. But, you know, as Mr. Ellis put it, it's true. Someone does own that property. It is zoned industrial general. And so what is going to happen, something is going in there. When I look at all the things that could go there, I think if my family lived there, would I want a plastics plant? Would I want something that could be open 24 hours a day? Would, you know, I try to think that the developer has really worked hard on making this property to where it's at least going to work with the residents. He's listened to you. He's really went above and beyond what a lot of developers would. And I see residents shaking their heads now. And it's, again, it's very hard, but the owner of this property could do a lot of things. And I just think, from where I stand, it could be worse. So.
I'll say one quick thing before Mike reads his novel over there. But
he will be good. He will make good choices for you.
It's good. You guys have heard it 5 times, but we don't take this lightly. It's not that we do this because this is a high-paying gig or because it's a lot of fun on a Tuesday night or we're missing the Thunder game. Does anyone know if we're winning? But the thing I have heard, I've been on here, this is my 3rd year, I think, and I've heard probably 6 apartment complexes come in. And I know the residents may not believe this, but I've never seen a developer from an apartment complex work this hard. Work this hard to try and appease as many people as you can. And we've heard it several times. Everybody's not going to be happy. I understand. I've been right in your shoes. The Aspen Heights original location was right behind my house. I was in your shoes right then. I voted for that location. I voted where you're sitting with my property values. I voted that was an okay location for Aspen Heights. They ended up, that didn't work. They moved somewhere else. So I have been where you guys are. And that's not easy to hear, I know. But I do say that of the 6 or 7 other apartment complexes, most developers come in, they try to meet a criteria, but they're pretty open to what we've suggested, and I commend them for that. At the same time, I commend, exactly like Dusty said, you guys have done an awesome job of getting together, voicing your opinion, and that's what this process is for. This process isn't for a developer to come in and get whatever they want. This is for us to try to allow as many people as we can to get their needs met, and that's what we try to do. So with that, know that we don't tread lightly on any of these decisions. Floor is yours.
Floor is mine. I again want to appreciate everybody's involvement in this project. A lot of thought has gone in it. I've spent a lot of time, as every other commissioner has, reading all the information that's been provided. With that, I'm going to make a motion.
But before we do that, Mike, I apologize. Could we read down through your amendments to it, if we will, just so if there's any discussion, we can clear that up before we actually put that in a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Item number 1, a minimum 40-foot setback on parking on the south side. Item number 2, the fence that's currently in the requested PUD be increased to a minimum of 6 foot tall. I didn't add any other changes because I'm still expecting that those bushes to be next to that fence. Evergreens to be across the entire south side of the development that abuts to the zoned RTM property, that when planted are a minimum of 15 feet tall and staggered so that they will provide a fully screened area except for the area along the stormwater detention facility where other types of trees are acceptable. In other words, they have other types of trees in their current landscape plan. That is acceptable. If they want to change them to evergreen trees or some other types of trees, that is acceptable. Provide a pedestrian easement of at least 10 foot in width on the west side of the project
The west side?
Yes. And I think we need, this is a preliminary PUD, and we need the developer to give us some suggestions on where that should go so we can provide a pedestrian bicycle connection through that area. So I didn't really specify the exact location based upon that. Number 5, the traffic engineering study to be approved by the city traffic engineer before final approval of PUD by city council. Now, the way I have phrased that is final approval of PUD. So I did not say before final approval of the preliminary PUD. So it does give a time frame there, and I think there should be discussions on that, yes.
At one point, the council does not approve the final PUD. The council approves the preliminary PUD. So you're talking about the engineering, or the engineer having completed the study before the 7th of April.
Okay. Is that, the study has been completed. The question is, can our staff review that before that time?
I would have to defer to Ms. Dennison on that question.
Well, not only review it, but then the comments have to be sent back, and then the engineer has to address those comments.
April 7th is going to be here before we know it. I will just clarify one thing that I think I heard, so correct me if I am mistaken or if I misspeak. If I heard correctly, you are asking that the traffic impact analysis be accepted by city staff prior to the final approval of the PUD?
Yes.
If I may, are you asking prior to the final approval of the preliminary PUD? Because that would also include the first and the second readings, which would allow approximately another 2 to 3 weeks after April 7th, depending on the action of City Council on the 7th.
I want to give the developer some time there to interact. So, yes, whatever the appropriate language is for the final approval of the preliminary PUD.
Can I clarify that point even further? Sorry. Are you wanting the city council to see the final product?
Yes, but I think I'm reacting more to other commissioners because my initial reaction is that traffic study has to be approved by the traffic engineer no matter what. So I
Sure.
don't have a
Correct.
problem leaving that number 5 out completely.
Okay. Well, because the final PUD is approved administratively, when all of the final components of the PUD that was, the preliminary are completed, the job of the development services and the traffic engineers to make sure that all of these things are done to the standards that were established in the preliminary PUD.
And I have confidence in our traffic engineer in terms of the traffic study. I have confidence in the city staff in terms of the drainage study. So to me, those requirements, those checks are already in our system.
Okay.
So do we remove item number 5?
We remove item number 5.
Thank you, sir. Stricken from the record.
Is that all?
That's it.
Does anyone have any discussion on any of those 4 items?
Just throwing this out there, I tried to put myself in the mode of a resident, and, in a perfect world, I'm blessed to live across from Boomer Lake. I wake up and I look out and there's Boomer Lake, and that's a neat thing. Would I want a row of tall evergreens right there solid? And I know they're gonna be staggered, but do we want some, maybe another, don't we want some variety? And wouldn't that be, in other words, it's kind of
You are correct. I want
a
evergreens.
little bit OSU-ish.
I love OSU. If I could make the evergreens orange, I would do that. But my concern is I want that visual impact to be there 12 months of the year. And it's got to be an evergreen to do that. And from what I heard from the residents is they're concerned about people looking in that, and it's going to be a few feet beyond their back fence and 15 to 25 foot in height. I think that's the way to go.
Ms. Dennison may have a clarification on height too versus what we've proposed.
Well, and I will mention, the residents are gonna have some input, to council or whatever, and if that's an issue, they'll have the ability to address it.
Again, if I understand correctly, with the additional evergreen landscaping to further screen line of sight, is the condition to allow that to be maximum height of 15 feet at maturity?
No, it was to be when they're first planted.
Okay,
A minimum 15 foot of height.
okay, thank you. That's the clarification that we needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want instant screening.
I want instant screening of 15 foot in height.
And staggered to where they are providing full screening across the area accessible.
Is my goal.
Cindy, do you feel like you got all 4 of those points? Well,
I got 'em.
Okay. Any more discussion? With that, Mr. Booth, we'd entertain a motion.
I move that we accept staff findings and recommend the city council approve the preliminary PUD with identified modifications, which I just identified.
Okay. We do a roll call?
Second.
We need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Place your votes. That does pass this evening, 6 yes, 0 no. That is the extent of our business this evening. With that, Chair, we entertain a motion of dismissal.
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All in favor, place your votes. We are adjourned.
Sorry, who seconded to adjourn?
Lori.
Lori.